Hello, and welcome to Hotkeys Esports. I am one half of your usual hosting duo, Preyter, and next to me is, as always, my
Dope
good
on.
friend.
Oh, I came in too early. Fuck.
No, that was fine. You were good.
Right on.
And today we're gonna do two things. One, we're gonna give you. Well, I take no credit for this. Dobin is going to give you an entire. We're gonna go over a historical 101 on the history of MOBAs. And I at some point will give you the top three of the Pokemon 2024 Cipher. And that's it. That's all we're here to do today.
That's it. That's it. That's the only thing we've got going on today. There's a lot of events happening, but this was pretty important because there's a lot happening within the space, and I felt necessary to, as we are an esports podcast, to indoctrinate
Mhm.
many people into the world of MOBAs.
Hell yeah.
Being one of the OG esports, right? You've got like arena shooters, you've got fighting games, and you've got MOBAs, RTSs, excuse me, and then
True.
MOBAs
No.
on top of that as proxy, as we'll learn today. So without you know, without further ado,
Further ado, there you go.
yeah, I blanked on it. I'll fix it in post.
No.
We're just gonna jump right into it. So
Stand on business.
there was no like official date for it, just a year. Sometime in January 2002. This dude went by the name of Gunner Forever in StarCraft 2. Sorry, not StarCraft 2. StarCraft 1 Brood War. Made a custom map called Aeon of Strife.
Hmm.
Widely regarded as the first MOBA. It had, I believe it was 4 lanes. And all you did was you picked a hero, you had AI units, and you could like summon helpers and stuff in RTS fashion. But it was just a lane pushing game. Like you just shoved a lane. And you got items by killing minions for materials, and that was your currency. And that was basically it. No abilities. It was very primitive in terms of like MOBAs now, but it got decently popular. It was like a tower defense game that you could play with other people. And yeah, that was kind of it. There was You had to defeat the enemy Zelnaga temple to win the game. So that was it. It was like 8 players, something like that, like 4 on 4 or some very primitive. I haven't played it. It is before my time, so far removed from it that I don't think I'll ever get around to it. But that was kind of the basis for it. And later on, it got ported to Warcraft 3, and there were other fan made variations of Aeon of Strife that popped up around the time. So that was the start of it all. Then you had I think one of the spin-offs was Valley of Descent, which could potentially be the
Is it also
inspiration.
in StarCraft?
I believe it's Warcraft 3. Yeah, I
Oh,
believe
okay, okay,
Valley of
okay.
Descent was Warcraft 3. Yeah. So
Oh,
Valley of
it's like an
Descent
offshoot of Defense of the Ancients.
of Aeons of Strife. And then we get to Dota through Aeons of Strife. So Aeons of Strife comes out, it's popular, people like it. A little bit of strategy in there, a little bit of RTS. Combines, you've got like a hero unit. It's interesting, it's new, it's flashy, right? And then you get Dota by Yule, who made the like first Dota map. And he said it was inspired by an AOS map. So people are led to believe that it's Valley of Descent because Valley of Descent had the like 3 lane structure kind of
Oh,
thing.
I see. I see. Okay.
So that's where potentially the it's not like like hard confirmed or anything, but that's potentially where the layout for Dota came from and all that. But in Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, you'll develop Dota, the map for it, added all the features, a couple heroes, very basic Dota, not Dota that we know today, not even Dota All Stars that we know yet. It wasn't until after a couple months, maybe like a year or two of working on it, that he kind of just left the project, and some people, Meian, I'm going to butcher the name, and Ragnar, compiled the best of all the community Dota maps, because after Yule made Dota, everybody else started making their own versions of Dota. There's like Dota Chaos in Korea. There's like so many different versions of original Dota that these guys came together and they compiled a kind of definitive edition of the game, which eventually turned into Dota All-Stars. This is out in 2003. January 9th, 2003 is when I believe Dota All-Stars officially launched. And so that was Man and Ragnar, and then and then they left the project after a few months and handed it over to Ginsu. Yes, that Ginsu, the same Ginsu that is, like lead game designer on League of Legends. Before League of Legends, he was making Dota. Ginsu then dragged in Ice Frog and Nikes to help with development, and then eventually Pendragon would join the team as like a community manager. He made the website and community engagement and everything like that. And that's Ginsu left the project eventually. Nikes also left, and it was solely left on Ice Frog to continue and kind of finish up the game, really. Ginsu's contributions did kind of leave lasting effects. I think he added 40 heroes to Dota in his time, and you'll see that is a kind of like the disparity between Ginsu and Ice Frog, right? When you look at the League versus Dota comparison, especially with their champion and hero release schedules, Ginsu's pumping out champs left and right, and Ice Frog, even in like original Dota development, kind of slowed that down and was a bit more methodical on how he was releasing characters and kind of perfecting them before they came out, as opposed to releasing the character and then hotfixing and balancing afterwards. Nothing wrong with either dev style. It's just the way they like to do things. Yeah, So Dota All-Stars eventually ended on the Frozen Throne. Warcraft 3, the Frozen Throne. And that was kind of it. Yeah. It ended on the Frozen Throne. He sat down and that was it. Shortly after that, I say shortly, the game stopped production like 2008 or something like that. We get a couple more games. Demigod comes out. That's, we can skip over that. It's inactive. League of Legends, the big one, the big kit and caboodle right here. God's gift to esports. Riot Games.
Certainly a historically lauded point.
This is like this is what modern MOBAs are. This was the jumping off point. So the dates I have down, I believe, are like their first widely playable date. So like the beta in 2009 that you could like buy or something like that is what I have. Like the founders packs that you could buy is what I have down. But the game didn't officially release until 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But so October 7th, 2009, we got a playable version of League of Legends to the masses. And, Brandon Beck, Mark Merrill, they wanted to make their own version of Dota. Dota was locked to Warcraft 3, so you had to buy Warcraft 3, figure out how to get the map, navigate through server browsers, this, that, and the other to get into it, to play a game that you would have to learn a completely new game to play because it doesn't play like Warcraft 3. Just borrows mechanics and then kind of makes them their own, right? A very high barrier of entry into Dota at the time. So they wanted to make something that had a lower barrier of entry, free to play, just download the game, jump into a match, play around with some of the characters. They streamlined a lot of the mechanics. So, no denying, set lane roles. That's where you get a lot of that from. They added an extra objective. Ginsu was responsible for adding Roshan to the game in Dota. And now we have Baron and Dragon in League. So, a little bit more of that innovative influence. And they pioneered the free-to-play business model in the West, partnering with Tencent, which was a bit more popular in the eastern regions. China, Korea kind of already had games like that, like Guns the Duel, things like that. So it was new, it was fresh, it was streamlined, it had like a modern edge to it coming out in the early 2000s. Had unique game modes, URF, ARAM, all that. And it carved its way to be the most watched, most played esport.
Was URF and ARAM on launch?
I don't think they were on launch, but encompassing
over time.
encompassing the legacy of League of Legends, right? as a
Well,
whole.
yeah, I was just saying. I mean, the most important thing
Yeah.
that I think that can be said about League in its current, well, like as it exists in like MOBA history, is it's still here. Like you
Yes.
said, it came out in 2009, and here we are in 2025. Almost like coming up on 4 years shy of what 20 years later.
20 years. Yeah, we had like
Yeah,
what, the 15th
the
anniversary
15th
just now.
anniversary. Yeah,
So
just now. The game is still around, and
yeah. And
still
it doesn't
strong
really
by
show
all
signs of
metrics. Yeah,
stopping.
that's the thing. Is like, yeah, it's like obviously are we living in the heyday? Maybe not, but it's not like the game is weak. It is not like the
Yeah.
game is not doing well. By every numeric account, the game is fine.
Yes.
Like, and
Yes.
is still actively trying to innovate and do its thing. I mean, like you see it, like you said, modes like ARAM, modes like Earth.
Hmm.
And I
The
mean,
arena
ones that
modes
have
that they've
come
added
in,
now, and
yeah, ones that have come and gone in the past. Arena being
yeah.
a seasonal event, experimental shit like Nexus Blitz, old Twisted Tree Line back in the day. The two
Hmm.
lane variant of the map, like
The
all
what was the
this kind of
Ascended
shit.
event that they had, the like the circular map where you had the control points
Oh
with
God,
the
I
like the
forgot what
Xerath
that
game
shit.
mode.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't even.
That was around the
Yeah.
time I started playing, so that's why I remember it. But
Mhm.
yeah, so it pioneered having those, because it took the inspiration from Warcraft 3 and having all those custom maps of other games to play, and they implemented that in their own style with their own balancing and their own flavor. Riot Games kind of had a brand identity with League that they wanted to fulfill, and they've done a good job since. So yeah, that's League of Legends. But at the same time, around the same time, really, we have Heroes of Newerth, which we played recently.
Yes, we did. We tried it
And
out. I played two
how
games of it.
how was how was the experience? How would you put our experience with Heroes of Newerth?
Um. Okay. I mean, so here's the thing. I don't. It's so weird. I don't. I
Listen,
guess.
man,
I guess we
you're
can
you're
talk about
about
this
to
now.
either upset like a bunch of 45-year-olds, or you're about to make people really
Well,
happy.
the fact of the matter is this. I to understand my perspective, I have to like give like my historical thing with
Yeah,
MOBA stuff. So I
sure.
guess we can just do this now. I didn't know if there was like a better place for this or if we just want to do this now. But for me to talk on Han, I have to like come out immediately with this shit.
Yeah.
So I at one point during the beginnings of League, like the big beginnings, when around the time it was popping off and becoming popular, I tried the game.
Hmm.
I bounced off it. Didn't get it, didn't understand it, thought the client looked like shit.
It did.
All this stuff.
It
Yeah,
was
and
fine. It
like
did.
I could not do it. And I was like, all right, I don't get it, and I moved on. Didn't touch a MOBA, didn't think about a MOBA, didn't do shit regarding a MOBA until Heroes of the Storm. Blizzard released Heroes of the Storm,
Hmm.
and I mean, historically, I'm a WoW player. I was a WoW player as far back as, I mean, fuck, I would make characters on my cousin's account during like vanilla and BC, and then I had my own
You know
account
that's
in Wrath of the
why.
Lich King.
That's why a
Um,
lot of Dota devs stop working on the game so I could play WoW.
hey,
Yeah.
that's I don't blame them. But yeah, so I'm historically a WoW player, so I have this long-standing relationship with Blizzard
Hmm.
through World of Warcraft and to a lesser degree StarCraft. I used to play a lot of StarCraft 2, like Brood War. Not I was like way too young to like play it online or competitively or anything like that. But like
But the
I used to
campaigns and
play it as
everything.
like a kid. Yeah, I used to play
Yeah.
campaigns and like do custom games just like against bots and shit like that all the time. So yeah, I have this long-standing relationship with Blizzard, right? And I'm like, they're like, okay, we're making a MOBA. We're making the Blizzard MOBA. And I was like, oh, if there's one company that's good at taking something big and like conceptually hard and then cutting out the chaff and making it easy to understand and easy to get into, it's Blizzard. They do it like every time. So sign me
Yeah.
up. Day one. And, the characters are there. I'm like, oh, I can play as Illidan. I can play as the Lich King. It's Sylvanas. My favorite World of Warcraft character is Sylvanas. Like all this shit. So I'm there day one. Here's the Storm. And I loved it. I thought the game was fun as fuck. I really enjoyed it. I played a lot of it. Like a lot of it. And it kind of like it that game established my sort of MOBA fundamentals. Like
Hmm.
everything I knew about MOBAs and understanding them
Pushing
comes from
lanes,
Heroes of
taking
the Storm. Yeah.
objectives. Yeah.
Yeah, fighting, and then that game, I mean, that game, if you know it, especially in its launch days, was not so much about lanes. It was all about fighting for objectives. Like that was the
Right.
entire game. Is it was just you fight, you get into team fights over objectives like all the time, controlling camps, controlling each map has its own objective a lot of the time. Shit like that, like where you do a thing and it'll does something different, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, no items. That game, especially at launch. I mean, it never did. It had items. It had items in its beta, and they cut them out. But like, yeah. So there were no items. It was just simply hero talents. Every other level, you would get like a new talent that like altered stuff, and then there was like your ultimate and like your level 20 talent were like kind of keystone
Hmm.
talents that really changed how your character played. Um, but yeah, so this creates like the basis for my fundamentals of MOBA, right? Is like here's the storm, and
Right.
I moved from here's this. Basically, I play that game for a long time, and I like it, and it's fun. I'm into it. Fast forward to 2012, maybe 2012, 2014, somewhere in that time span. I don't quite remember which. I start watching competitive League of Legends. This has been discussed before, but yeah, I start watching like how I got there. But yeah, through Cloud9, I start watching competitive League of Legends, and I'd probably say I watched it for about a year, like not playing the game, like just not playing the game at all, never touching the game.
Just
I
purely
just watched it.
spectator. Yeah.
Yeah, I literally just watched competitive League,
Hmm.
and that was it. Year goes by, and I've watched it enough at this point, to where I'm kind of like the thought crosses my mind of like, oh, I should
Maybe I
try
should
this
give it a
game
shot.
again. Yeah, I now have a better. I'm not going into it raw anymore. Like I have an understanding of MOBAs through Here's the Storm. Like I know how to like operate the game on a basic level. I should try League again. This leads me into trying League, and actually, and like from this point forward, I've played League since, right, on and off, as we all do. But yeah, like I start playing League, and I see a level of like nuance. Like I consider it like levels, right? Like there are levels of depth
Yeah.
in each of these games that are increasingly more complex as you kind of go down the pipe, so to speak. Out of all the MOBAs I've played, Heroes is obviously the easiest to understand, followed by League, which adds essentially a much laning is way more important. It's a way like it's you have to last hit. That's like one of the obviously the
There's a
biggest
lot more
things.
micro knowledge that you
Yeah,
need for League than Heroes of the Storm.
right. There's just like more things to keep track of in a lane scenario. Comebacks were generally harder, I had found, than like what would normally happen in Here's the Storm game, stuff like that. But I came to like not only learn that shit, but like appreciate it. Like I like League of Legends laning. I think laning phase and the trade patterns and stuff like that, and the forcing last hits and manipulating waves, is fun, and it's something that at least at the level as I mean you don't last hit at all in Heroes of the Storm, so like that shit doesn't matter. Period.
Yeah.
But like the that stuff was interesting to me because like yeah, it was just a level of depth that I enjoyed. I liked having. And I thought that yeah, it was just fun. So I come to play League, I come to enjoy League, right?
Hmm.
And it hits for me well. I still to this day like it a lot. I like the phases of it. I like the way the game. I like the flow of the game. Um, I have since tried Dota, which I would consider, or Dota 2.
Yeah.
Dota 2 is the next level of depth on top of that. There are more mechanics you're dealing with, day night cycles, shop, like
High
whole
ground,
different like
different
shop, high
shops.
ground,
Yeah.
low ground, multiple bosses, camps work differently. Champions have less defined roles, are more universally applicable. All of this other stuff, it's a little more freeform, which
It's
is
just one. It's just the
no,
one boss.
huh?
It's just the one. It's just Roshan.
Yeah, yeah, the one boss.
Yeah.
The there is it is there is less defined roles and things like that, and I also think it has less defined phases of game, at least personally, um, and just a higher level of inherent like complexity.
Yeah.
Um, Not to say that one is harder. I think like this notion that like one game is inherently harder than the other or takes more skill than the others. It's they prioritize different skill sets. Um, but yeah, so I tried Dota, and I think Dota is very cool, and I like watching Dota. But the lack of definedness I struggle with from a gameplay standpoint, and it leads me to not like it very much from a playing standpoint. So how does this all relate to Han, right? To tie it all together. Han to me has the worst parts of Dota. Just like when we played it, I was like,
We were
there is no
45
sense
minutes
of
into a game, and you said to me, I don't know who's winning. Like, I don't know.
well, I felt stuck in limbo, man. Like I didn't.
Yeah.
There was no sense of progression. I didn't feel like anything was happening, differing as the time went on. Like in League of Legends, like this is what I said we were playing it. In
Yeah.
League of Legends, you have a laning phase. At some
Mhm.
point, usually around 15 minutes, or basically when the first turrets start to fall, there's a
Right.
very clear like we're moving out of set lanes now. The
You also
map
have
is
the inclusion of things like the Grubs and the Herald and Baron to kind
oh
of
they've
punctuate
made
those
it even
things
more
too.
defined. Yeah, they've
Yeah.
absolutely made it even more defined now with like especially with like Otacon because now it very much feels like from 12 minutes on there is an objective you can fight for constantly, like almost
Yeah.
constantly. Um, so like But yeah, you're right. There is a clear time in which it's like, okay, lanes are over, and now we are in the mid game. And then somebody takes Baron, and usually when the first team takes Baron, you're kind of now in a late game scenario, at least after the first Baron push, or once you're hitting like four dragons, stuff like that.
Right.
And I think that sense of structure works. And
Yeah.
you feel a sense of progression as you buy items and like shit like that, and you move down the map. In that game, we killed. They
Like
had
a
killed
tower?
all of our towers. It's so at like 45 minutes because we were like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we hit 45 minutes. Towers on the map had been dead for 20 minutes, but neither base is cracked. I couldn't tell if we were winning or losing, even though I was being one shot by the entire enemy team. Like it didn't matter who it was. They would find me and they would kill me instantly.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'd find me, they'd kill me instantly. We're 50 minutes in, yet no base is falling down. Suddenly there's a team fight at 45 minutes that we wipe their team and two or three of us stayed alive. And we just won the game off it over a push that lasted an additional like 5 to 8 minutes.
Yeah, I think
I
barracks
don't,
take up
like-
a lot of time in those games too.
Like
Barracks are
it's
a
literally
problem.
like there's no fucking telling. Like I couldn't tell you when we were in the mid game. I couldn't tell you that we were gonna end the game off that. And I never felt a sense of real like character progression or getting stronger
We even
from
took like Kongor
minute
that game. Like,
5
we
to
took
minute
the
45.
we
Like
took like the Roshan of that game at some point too, and
yeah. I don't
we-
even know
we
what
were
he
like-
did. Like
we were like, all right, we've got. You can like pick an extra buff or something like that. Like you got like that little shop menu that pops up on the side.
yeah.
And you
they
get, like,
could,
the
add
red
something
buffs.
or whatever.
Yeah. Which is like cool conceptually, but yeah, like we took Kong, and at no point was I like, all right, I got in. Granted, maybe it was because we were behind or whatever, but at no point did it really feel like the impact of that made an impact on our gameplay. We were still getting one shot. So
Yeah, like I said, it just nothing felt like it bled into anything else. Like I felt literally no sense of progression, like
Yeah,
at
it-
all.
it did have like a similar flow, and that's part of the Heroes of Newerth experience, where Han was kind of capitalizing on the Dota popularity.
It
right,
feels
League of
very
Legends-
Dota. It seems
yeah.
like it was made to be much more like Dota, obviously.
allegedly Ice Frog was working with S2 Games to do some of the like balancing and like working on some of the stuff. Um, it was around the time that he was having a falling out with Pendragon when Pendragon went to Riot. So like none of the claims that either of them made against each other are confirmable, and a lot of people within S2 Games are like under some kind of contract to like not talk about it.
Well, I mean, there was. I
So
mean, I can't give you dates or anything, but like the early history of Riot and everyone surrounding that scene, like Riot was known for poaching like a
oh yeah, they
ton of
poached hella
talent from
Dota talent.
multiple studios.
Yeah.
There was
Like I said,
a
they grabbed
point. There
Ginsu.
was a
Ginsu's
they
Rageblade
poached like
is
an entire animation department from Blizzard, like literally a
yeah.
cinematic department. Like,
Yeah. This is also something funny I want to mention around this era is when these games were coming out, you know how like now you have more modern MOBAs and a lot of other like hero based games where they're like ex Riot devs,
yeah,
right? But before it was like ex Dota devs.
no, yeah,
It
exactly.
was like
This is the same thing.
six guys on computers coding a mod for like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah,
So, but yeah. Yeah, so Han kind of starts picking up. It's very Dota inspired. And it's pretty much Dota 2, right? Like before Dota 2. The game
sure.
is
Yeah,
what a sequel of Dota should be. And a lot of Dota, like hardcore Dota fans that didn't really like vibe with League. And the dates that these released are about a year apart from each other. Granted, their betas and everything overlapped, so these games were in development around the same time,
yeah.
and a lot of people had access to both games, right? So you had some pros in Dota. If you've watched Free to Play, you'll remember HYHY, who transitioned to League of Legends after his Dota career instead of sticking with Dota, and he flipped back and forth between two games. He came back a couple years ago to play for like Five Fries or something like some like local team. I don't know, but he also had he was on, I think it was like Sentinels or something like that. Not Valorant Sentinels, but like sh- uh Shanghai Sentinels, something like some weird Southeast Asian team. He was from Singapore for a bit on League back in the day. So you had people like that playing. I guess it was a lot of Eastern players too, although Han is huge in like Thailand. But a lot of like the Eastern players like China, Korea played a lot of League, and then
Mhm.
a lot of Western players like PPD, Fly, all those guys played Han. If you look at the Han Reborn trailer, and we'll get to Han Reborn towards the end of this kind of lesson, but in the Han Reborn trailer, you see Fly, you see like a lot of these players, like Dota players, but like from their Han days, holding up trophies and like celebrate. It's a pretty sick trailer. I'll give it that. But we'll get into a bit more of that later on. Right now, S2 Games make Han. It's just Dota. A lot of pros, current Dota pros, kind of got their start in Han competitively. Kind of kicked
Certain league
off.
players too. Sneaky was a
Yeah,
sneaky
a lot
lauded.
of early league players too.
Obviously, C9 ADC was a Han player before he was a
Hmm.
league player.
And there's some similarities, right? Han, I believe all the characters have four abilities. I don't know if they have passives, but I believe it consolidates them into the four abilities. Dota had characters with like 27 abilities, Shadow Invoker. But yeah, so it streamlined a lot of the mechanics. It had faster gameplay. It was I want to say it's snappier. That game has like a detection problem, in my opinion. Everything kind of just like abilities. I see abilities move towards somebody and land on them, but I don't like it. Doesn't have like an impact to me, and maybe it's just because I'm playing too many modern games where it's like big Michael Bay explosion when something like lands. But
To
you know,
me, it's like okay, that is true. The problem is I don't really know how to describe this because I
yeah.
think I find that same thing happens in Dota 2 a lot also.
No, no
And I
doubt.
think
Yeah,
it's something to do with maybe just the high damage and like quickness of a lot of the abilities. where
Hmm.
like shit just like explodes and it's like you don't know. Like I feel like certain Dota 2 champions, you feel it. Like there's a feel to the animation that like makes sense. Like I think like
Yeah.
Primal Beast and shit like that are like really good examples of characters where like all the impact of everything they do is like felt and there's a lot of like feedback there.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, I mean it was the same thing. The character I played in Han, like I the fucking ability is just like I don't know. Like it just felt like
I
just
played
shit like was
Polywog
happening. I
Shaman
don't know.
or some Polywog Priest, I think that's his name. I said Shaman,
Mhm.
but I think it's Polywog Priest. He's the Shadow Shaman clone of Han, and the Aethershock ability, his Q, kind of just felt like a little bit of a wet noodle, in my opinion. But then,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the only ability I did that felt like it did anything at all was my ult because I it was a stun, so there was like a visual
and it
thing that
executed too,
like
right?
it stunned and executed, but like I couldn't even tell you if it killed something. I just
Yeah.
know that the person would stop moving, so I knew it worked. And then I had an ability that would give me back mana, and that was very obvious because my mana went up.
Dude, we were like
um,
ripping apart Han. It was all the
I,
boom.
like I said, I don't think it's inherently a Han problem. Like I
Yeah, no,
legitimately, like I said, I
you
think
do
it
see
was
it in Dota a
Han.
lot.
Yeah, Han made me realize that League of Legends is as far, at least until something shows up that proves me wrong. Like
Yeah,
put is different. League of Legends is like as far as I want to go down the hole because I
yeah.
think the other areas of
It
like
starts getting weird,
that many
man.
would find like are like the other areas of shit getting pushed media denial shit like that. I just simply don't want to do it. Like it's just and like I like a predefined phase. Like I like that is the thing that hits on it the most for me is League of Legends has a predefined structure
Hmm.
that appeals to me. And these games that have less of a defined structure, or at least one that is less obvious, it
I
just
think
like
that also comes with the
I lose that sense
flexibility
of.
of the
Well, no,
games
I think it
too.
does too. I think 100% the
Yeah.
flexibility is partially what makes it so complicated.
Because it's like
Because yeah, this
you hit a
lack
certain
of
point
rigidity.
and a hero might transition into a different role like midway through the game, and it happens on both teams, and everybody's just like farming jungle for the next 30 minutes to try to like figure that out.
Yeah, and
So
then obviously there's like a long-standing thing that is inherently true. It's like the biggest difference when people talk about there's a difference in balancing philosophy for League of Legends and Dota 2 that has inherently always been true. And it's like the most obvious one that Dota is typically balanced around items as to where League of Legends is balanced around champions.
yeah,
Um even to make it one step further, League of Legends is balanced around champions and summoner spells simultaneously, right? Like it is like they are so intrinsically tied to the game that the entire game is balanced around them.
League of
Um,
Legends is based around the Blink Dagger meta of original Dota, and that is what Flash is, and
no, yeah,
it has remained
the
as
entire
such.
game is balanced around Flash because they can't get rid of Flash. Like, and it
Yeah.
is known as a ubiquitous summoner spell that is taken in 95% of scenarios,
If they
like
were
by
ever to
every
make a
champion on the
League
map.
2, not that they will or not that they should, but if hypothetically if they ever were to do that, you would probably have Flash as a just an ability on your
Yeah,
hotbar, and then you could take another summoner spell just to
and
kind
they've
of
said I think there's
mix
been
it up.
multiple things where they've talked about that for
Hmm.
seasons. Like it's like a topic that comes up every once in a while when talking about new seasons. Is like, do we want to try this? But like, it's such a slippery. Like it's something that like
That will make or break your game.
you'd have to take such great caution in doing something
Hmm.
like that because it is so warping in so many ways. But yeah, like that balancing philosophy just will change the game so much in and on itself, right? Where
Hmm.
the power is in the champions and the items that enhance the champions. As to where I do think in Dota, item power is insane. Like the items just do such absurd fucking things.
A lot more
That
active items too, and
oh
like
yeah,
they will turn a fight immediately, right? Like Shiva's guard, like a Blink Shiva's is so impactful in so many situations.
Well, the
that
items will literally just warp what your champion does almost entirely. Like
yeah,
your kit is almost in some ways can be about facilitating what your items do rather than
yeah,
like the items helping your champion do what your champion does sometimes. As to where like if you're an 80 carry in League of Legends, let's say you buy like Navori quick blades, right? I think is like a good example of like an item like this, right? Where it's like, what does
mhm,
Navori's inherently do in League of Legends? And it's like, well, for an ADC like Lucian, what's Lucian's main like concept as a champion? He wants to cast his abilities to then proc a passive that gives him 2 auto attacks instead of 1 on an auto attack. Every auto is doubled, right? So it's like, okay, every time I cast an ability, my auto is doubled. So I want to cast abilities a lot to keep getting double autos and put out consistent damage.
yeah,
So what do my items do to facilitate that? Navori Quick Blades makes it so that every time I auto attack, my abilities cooldown is reduced, which then makes me do it more, right? That is like so counter to the way that Dota does items because it's just like the items are built to facilitate Lucian the champion and like what he does conceptually.
yeah.
As to where in Dota you have items like Blink Dagger that are just like this shit teleports or like fucking like you said like Shivas and like shit like that which are like it
You
it's
blast a
just
cone of
yeah.
cold around you.
Yeah, and it's like the items are just straight up doing things, adding features, essentially adding full on abilities to a champion. As to where the items in League, like I said, are developed to
Wasn't it?
push
Mel's
a
Reflect was an
champion's
item in
kit
Dota for
further.
like 5 years already,
No,
maybe even
exactly.
longer.
Like you're talking about items that are literally essentially adding basic abilities to champions.
Yeah,
As to where in League, items are meant to push a champion's kit further.
right. Yeah, that's the the big takeaway between the two games, and that's a big
Yeah.
takeaway from games like Han as well, where that inspiration
Yeah,
kind of
you
comes.
are essentially forced into following one of two philosophies. If you're from this point in history, right? Where it's like at this point, you're talking about. Because at this point, so what? Dota came out. What's the date on Dota 1?
Dota 1
Like
All
Dota All
Stars,
Stars
yeah,
specifically, yeah.
January 9th, 2003, if I'm not mistaken.
So yeah, so here at 2009, where League of Legends comes out, it creates
Right.
essentially this. It's the first real competitor to Dota from a MOBA standpoint,
Yeah.
and it makes MOBAs mainstream, uh,
Right.
like almost by itself. So now in the MOBA world, the world is
To
like
the point where
more.
most players, like most new players, don't even know that Dota existed or came out first.
Yeah,
I
no, I mean it was
like
huge.
they
Like I said, the kind of people like that I remember hearing talk about League of Legends would shock me because they are and there's nothing inherently wrong with this. People enjoy hobbies to different degrees, but like I remember talking to kids who in my school and shit who I would typically associate with like they were Call of Duty players, like they would play Call
yeah.
of Duty when it came out. Suddenly those people were playing League, like, and I was just like, that's a crazy jump that like is being made. Like,
The
um,
is a way
but
slower game. That gameplay loop
yeah,
is nuts.
and it was that big. That's how big League of Legends was at that time. Like it was all over the place, and it was literally showing up and turning people into League players like that. So it creates this jumping point, where now in the MOBA space, you are essentially, if you're going to make a game after this, you're either going to reinvent the wheel or you're going to follow one of two philosophies. And those
Yeah.
philosophies were simply League of Legends or Dota. Like,
Right. That was your meta. It's like what works, what can we do to maximize like what's working, right? And then also the monetary model of League of Legends being free to play kind of translated and became ubiquitous with the genre as well. Because
oh
every
yeah, I
game
mean
after that,
it forced it. Like that was the
yeah.
thing is now you had this new era where it's like, okay, well if people even want to play our game, it has to be free because
Right.
they can just go, well, why would I pay $40 for that when I can play League of Legends for free?
Let me specify it popularized it in the West because this was
Yeah.
already a thing in the East with, you know, cosmetic sales, and you see it in Crossfire, you see it in, I said it once, Guns, right,
Mhm.
around the same time. So things like that. You
No, yeah.
get that. But speaking of reinventing the wheel, we reach our first lightning round. Yes, there's two lightning rounds in this. The second one is much larger and happens much later after what I like to call the boom. Five big booms for the MOBA genre. Boom, 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 boom. That might have been four. First
God
one we
bless.
have Monday Night Combat. It was developed by, who was it developed by? I have a table that I made, and it is a very intensive table. Monday Night Combat, Uber Entertainment, came out on PC and Xbox. The first one, because there's two, first one is still playable technically. I think it's not private servers, but you have to, like, there's like a server browser or something in the game. You can still get on Steam. Play around with it if it suits your fancy. Third person shooter, but with towers and MOBA elements. Kind of reminds me of Sanctum a little bit. Not like aesthetically, but Sanctum is like a first person tower defense game. And it's just something about the vibe of having like a shooter version of a game with towers kind of just goes into that. And it had the traditional MOBA gameplay loop: shoot towers, kill creeps, upgrade your character, that kind of thing. Third person. So it did something new. It was popular with a pretty niche crowd, decently popular. Survived for till like 2020 or something like that, or maybe like 2018, but still survived for a pretty long time considering that it came out in like 2010, August 11, 2010. So that's one. Bloodline Champions, and this one is near and dear to my heart because it spawned Battle Right, and we'll talk about Battle Right later in the second lightning round. But this one took the familiar isometric camera style, but shifted the gameplay to a twin stick shooter style, made it much faster, and focused on arena combat. So think of like an ARAM kind of effect, or a Mid Wars in Han, if you're coming off of like the Han train, right? Because Han
Mhm.
also had different game modes in it. Mid Wars being like one of the most popular. Yeah, so you had an arena style game where you would fight other people over a central objective on different maps, and it was less. There was like no farming, nothing really MOBA esque, but it still had the MOBA identity with the different characters, their abilities. You would level up round to round, things like that. Yeah, revolution. I think twin stick shooter controls are the quintessential control scheme for MOBA games. I don't think I think the mouse and like clicking RTS style movement is archaic, and I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Listen, I say this with all the love in my heart because I play all these games. I haven't played all of them, but I will if you want me to. I'm down. I love them. I played most of them, all different control schemes, and I found that the twin stick is the smoothest and feels the best. And it also invites the most people because more people are familiar with shooters and modern games. So at the time, right, RTSs were popular: Warcraft 3, Command and Conquer, all that. So yeah, the RTS movement made sense for this game. Now, in the modern era, WASD is common. Aim with your mouse, very common. So it makes sense. That's my tirade on that. Next one we have is Awesome Knots. Do you ever play Awesome Knots?
No,
I haven't
legit.
played Awesome
I
Knots
like I
either.
said, I played Heroes of the that was legit my MOBA timeline until like relatively recently.
Yeah.
It was bounce off League of Legends in like 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And don't touch a MOBA until Heroes of the Storm in
Yeah.
fucking like what 2015 or whatever the fuck. Like,
Yeah. Well, we're almost there. We're almost there. We're getting to. We
yeah.
got like three more games ahead of Hots, but we'll get to Hots. Three
Hmm.
and a half more games because we got a couple stragglers in there.
Hmm.
Yeah, Awesome Knots was a 2D game, 2D side-scrolling game. Inspiration from 2D platformers and fighting games. Same kind of MOBA mechanics though. You pick a character, you got levels, you push lanes. There's different maps. But the one that I've like kind of seen the most and kind of seen the most gameplay on is like two lanes, top and a bottom, and then there's like a central jungle. and again, it's 2D like platforming, so it's side, side to side, all that. Yeah, it was 3v3, pretty cool. Kind of again, these are the ones that were a bit more experimental, coming off of the League of Legends and Han kind of train, and these were early 2010s. Like these games don't pass 2012 really, because what Awesome Nauts comes out in 2012, and then it's Dota 2 2013 final release, right? There was the betas, there was the invitationals, right? There was the international that happened before the game's release. I think like what 2011. So 2 years before the game was even out, they had the first international, and that was a mess. Listen, free to play will have you think that was a legit tournament. That is a deadlock kind of experience where people were playing this game for money, for $1 million. Like, are you kidding me? We do have Super Monday Night Combat in there. That is there's a follow-up game to Monday Night Combat. People are excited for it. It's, as far as I know, it remains inactive, but you can still play the first one, which I think people preferred, because Super Monday Night Combat kind of changed a few things up, if I'm not mistaken. I did research on the bigger ones. I did a little bit of research on the smaller ones.
It doesn't have to be a comprehensive timeline. It doesn't have to be. We're not here to tell you every little. There are 17 million Uber games.
If you do want to know a more in-depth timeline, there is a great resource called lanepushingames.com. It will bring you through everything, and it is my current well of information for the deadlock talking point that we have later on, regarding Dota: The Thirst for Gamma. What was supposed to be Yule's sequel to Dota that never really came to be. I don't know if he has any input on Deadlock, if he's still like developing stuff. Like, he was at one of the internationals, and I don't know how close he is to the space now, because I'm not a developer. I don't pay attention to the developer side of these games, but it's the page on Lane Pushing Games is pretty conclusive. So we'll get to that. But as mentioned, we have reached 2013. Dota 2 is officially released on July 9th, and currently active player base, despite what anyone else will have you believe. People play this game. Valve brings on Ice Frog. They're like, hey, you made Dota, and Riot got the guy that first made Dota, kind of, or the second guy to make Dota. So you're the third guy that made Dota, fourth guy that made Dota, because Nykus kind of fell into the ether, as far as I know. So you get to make our game. And then there was a big legal battle with Blizzard, because they're like, no, it uses our characters. You guys can't do that. And they're like, well, the characters will just have different names and different models, and they won't be your characters anymore. And they're like, damn, that makes sense. And so that's what they did. That's why everybody in Dota 2 looks different than their Dota 1 counterpart. Especially Wraith King. That was a big thing. They couldn't name him Skeleton King, because that was like a WoW boss or something like that.
Nah, it's Diablo.
A Diablo boss? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's in Heroes of the Storm as literally Skeleton King.
Yeah. So they had to change Wraith King. Yeah. So the long-awaited sequel to the original Warcraft 3 mod, Dota, Defense of the Ancients, Dota 1, Dota All-Stars, right? The game currently has the full roster and then some of the first game. They've added, I don't know exactly how many new additions to Dota, but they've added new heroes, and there's more to come. As a veteran Dota players started playing Dota 2 because it was like huge. It was blowing up on the Han forums. It was blowing up on the League forums. It was blowing up everywhere. Game FAQs, wherever you could talk about a video game, Dota was everywhere. And then of course the international rolled around, and that was insanity. As an esports podcast, it is only right that we mention how Dota boasted the largest prize pools in esports history, capping at, I believe, $40 million, which is an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
Insane amount of money. And it hasn't been done since
absurd.
Because of they don't let the community crowdfund, and they don't make good items that we want to put money into anymore anyways. So It's not Valve's fault. It's not the community's fault. It's the people organizing the tournament's fault.
It's a mixture of everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I blame.
I think
Or PGL.
it's a topic for another time. But yeah, there's a lot going into that.
When TI rolls around, we will revisit that. But it did solidify itself as one of the largest esports within the space.
Massive. One of the biggest events of the year every year, like without a fail.
Rivaled only by League of Legends, which probably created the most consistent esports league of all time, right? And then Dota made like the biggest esports events.
I was gonna say, you can attribute so Riot, like, and I mean this has less to do with the game and more to do with like the esports side of things, right?
Yeah.
But like Riot basically taking the esport and bringing it almost entirely in house was also absolutely unheard of. Like
insane, right? And
like,
we all know we've got plenty of episodes talking about how much of a money sink esports is.
Yeah.
For most people, like there's the outliers of the C9s, the liquids.
And I mean, it's only gotten more in-house since then, because at least back in the day, that shit used to show up at, IEMs and like stuff
packs.
like that.
Yeah, the pack skins you can only get by showing up to the events and watching the league games and buying a ticket.
The PAX tournaments and like shit. So like Riot over time actively pulled it from like the public domain. Not that there isn't, public league shit. There still exists. Like, fucking... they're tier 2 qualified. Like you can.
WEC also isn't a Riot event, but they still have a League of Legends.
Yeah, well, that's even
streaming.
more. That's a topic for next episode that we'll be recording this week. Yeah, that's a whole thing. But like, I'm in tier 2, right? Tier 2 has been kind of taken as Riot tries to save money, and not just throw a bunch of it into a fire. One of the first things that felt that hit was tier 2, and tier 2 is kind of moved back towards a more open format where you can form a team of 5 guys and basically compete to try to get into Riot tier 2. And now even with like the guest slot that exists in actual LTA, your team can win a spot to upgrade from tier 2 into LTA proper. Like
I mean they've definitely right. They've definitely done a phenomenal job of facilitating their esports and making it like an actual business as opposed to crypto scams.
They showed that like a league model, and not to say league as in League of Legends, like a literal a league format for those who know sports terminology. Like a league format is something you can do if you're going to put the time and money into it. Because
and they did it.
Those are really the requirements. Like
they did it early enough that they're seeing the payoff of it now, right? Like the LTA,
it's grown into a like you said, probably the largest, like easily the largest owner controlled esport. Like like there's no game IP that has a league that they are so fundamentally controlling over. It doesn't exist in any other game.
It was also so safe as like an esports investment that you had like Shaq, Rick Fox, Mark Cuban, like all these billionaire sports guys, even people from outside the sports world, but we're sports guys outside of the podcast, so I talk about sports guys investing in it, and it was pretty safe, right? You had Rick Fox on Echo Fox and Delta Fox, right? Shaq was also with him on that investment.
He's part of NRG.
NRG, yeah. Shaq was on NRG.
Or an investor in NRG, I should say.
Yeah. Mark Cuban had something, and he talked about why he got out of esports also. So if you're interested in that, there is a video of Mark Cuban explaining why he left the esports scene and like left that.
There's a lot of back. The problem with esports is still no one has figured out. Very few, I should say. I think there's a couple teams that do a decent job of monetizing it and making a return on investment. But
FaZe does good because they're a content org.
Most teams don't. Like that's the fact. Is most teams and like whatever's looking for investment can't monetize and don't know how to monetize. And so in that sense, esports becomes a money pit. Because you are just not, unless your team is winning, like actively winning everything that they are competing in, they are not making back the investment.
You've got
and
teams
it's just
like,
it's not realistic to win that consistently.
Right. You've got teams like Liquid, FaZe, right? Liquid
No,
has been
yeah.
in the space
Cloud
for
Nine,
decades.
like
FaZe is a content org. They get most of their revenue from their YouTube and from the content they make. They sign
yeah,
streamers, they sign artists, they sign all kinds
yeah.
of people so that they can do that. They have you're looking at orgs like fuck, I literally just had it and I lost
Liquid,
it.
Cloud Nine, they've both monetized, like
Liquid
in the
Cloud
sense of
9.
like a sports
Shopify
sort of
Rebellion
monetization.
is it's just Shopify,
Well,
right?
that's the
Like
thing is like those are the kind of orgs where it's like Shopify Rebellion just feels like an advertisement, right? Like
yeah,
the
and
like it's the platform is Shopify, and it's just like
right.
they have a team as like a form of advertisement almost.
But even then, like that works for them because they can,
No, yeah,
you know,
I'm talking
that
about purely on teams that are like monetizing off like the team itself. Like
right,
Liquid
okay.
is an esports team first and foremost. Like yes, they have Liquipedia, but like I guarantee the ads on that make them nothing. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
So it's like, what does Liquid do? And it's like Liquid monetizes their fan base. You know, they sell
Hmm.
merch. They seek out collaborations with big name things to sell more merch. You know, they
Hoodie
invest in
orgs, man.
teams and things like that. Huh?
The hoodie orgs.
No, 100 Thieves is a hoodie org. That is a whole
100 Thieves is the
yeah,
hoodie
like
org.
yeah, hoodie. They were, and like I said, I originally thought 100 Thieves is so baffling to me because my thing with like 100 Thieves is like I actually think that is a model that is smart and can be utilized. Where they're like, oh,
Yeah.
we're an esports org, and we're like over investing in
Into
streetwear
their
culture.
streetwear, yeah.
Yeah. Like so it's like that's our way of like selling stuff, you know?
And
It's
that
like we
market goes
are
hand in hand. It should it in theory it should print money.
no, yeah, and the problem with 100 Thieves seemed like they tried to get into 7 million things at the same time, including a fucking energy drink and all this other shit.
Yeah.
Um
The 100 Thieves
and it
ghost
just
can or whatever.
it just blew yeah, it all just blew up in their fucking blew up in their face and they ended up losing a bunch of money on a ton to try to develop a fucking first person shooter game. Like
I didn't
you
know about that
doing?
one. That was
Like,
actually kind of
you didn't
nuts.
know about that? Yeah, no. They wanted
Yeah.
to fucking make a first-person shooter in house, like 100 Thieves
That's
game development, and then I think that entire team got fucking laid off. Like,
yeah, I'd
you know,
imagine.
like it's like all of this shit. It's there's so many failures of monetizing, and that's why investment gets weird. But yeah,
Yeah. Anyways,
yeah. Back
we've got the
down the
next
list.
game. Back down the list. This is a this is an all-encompassing lesson. This is a lesson on
Yeah.
MOBA, on esports.
Well, I
This is
think
what,
it
this is what
just
we're
shows
about.
that MOBA the genre is tied
Yes.
to it has an
It's
inherent tie to esports more so than many
yeah.
genres.
Like we started this off. Like the ones tied to the foundation of esports are like RTSs, arena shooters, MOBAs, and fighting games.
Yeah.
And you can tie in RTSs and MOBAs into the same genre, and the RTS players will get mad at me, but ain't nobody playing Age of Empires 2 anymore, man. It's been the same eight
Europe
guys
is.
for the last like 10 years.
I would say Europe loves it.
Oh yeah, of course they do. Of course they do. It's their game, man. It's
Nah,
their
it's
game.
it's like an umbrella thing. There's a cool video that I believe is a Core A gaming video who does like really in-depth long form fighting game topic stuff that are all he usually releases like one video a year, two videos a year.
Yeah.
But they're very good.
They're
They're very
very
detailed,
in-depth.
like well researched. Yeah. And he has one called the Fighting Game Umbrella. That kind of just tries to create this like
He breaks
family
down the
tree
genres, right?
for
Yeah.
like fighting games and
God, I
like
love that
what
one.
offshoots of what, and shit like that. And I do think if you were to try to do that for MOBAs, I do think you would find a pretty deep tie between RTS and
Yes. Yeah,
and MOBAs.
they
historically.
started off as RTS mods. So,
Well, and to be and let's be real. You talk about because yeah, it's like oh, it's a Warcraft mod or whatever, right? Like you know
right.
this kind of shit. Warcraft was literally just supposed to be a twist on the RTS genre. Like it
Yeah,
was like
you had hero
yeah,
units
like,
in
it's like
in
oh, what if we made like an Uber
that already.
unit constantly that is in like tied to the game of an RTS? Like
It's like playing Commander in Magic where you like have a guy and then you do all the other RTS stuff with that guy.
No, yeah.
Maybe
Like I
that's
said, they are intrinsically tied to each other, I think, in like the grand, overarching family tree umbrella.
But as time marches on, so do we stray farther and farther from the RTS side of.
Well,
Oh,
like
one
now,
thing I
so
forgot to
what? We're at,
mention.
we're at Dota. We're at Dota 2013, right?
Yeah.
So
One thing I forgot to
I
mention
think,
real quick about Awesome
mhm,
Nuts. Atari
yeah.
also developed that game, which is the first time that we see like a large studio, like a established studio to that caliber kind of dip their toes in this, and we'll see that a bit later on with some more games.
I think to
But
be fair, contextually, at this what that's 2012.
2012,
Atari had died and like pseudo revived at that point. But yeah, I see
sure,
your
but
point.
like
Yeah,
the brand of Atari is like known by everybody, right? So
yeah,
having Atari like slapped
and
onto
that's
your
about
game,
and that name is about all they have. Yes, you're
yeah.
right.
But it's the first example that we see. Again, we get some more that are a bit more modern and hip, as the kids would say.
Mhm.
This one is not one of those games. This is Smite 2014.
Right.
We have hit March 25th, 2014. Hi-Res Studios and Titan Forge Games come together and they put out Smite. Unreal Engine 3, crazy lighting, crazy graphics, third person MOBA, action combat, everything's a skill shot. It's based on mythology, so you've got Anubis fighting Odin and not Hermes, because I know they do have Hermes. They have Hermes and Nike, and they're two different characters. And one of them, Nike's actually cooler because she does nothing that Hermes does. Yeah. Anyways, you've got all that going on, right? Some history nerd is gonna like go into the comments and be like, they're actually not the same. You've got it all wrong, buddy. Okay, thank you. Uh, yeah, I mean that's really the draw of Smite was that it was third person, right? And it was on all platforms eventually. I don't know when they started porting it over, if it was simultaneous release or not. I just know that I could play that on everything. I got a Switch. It was on there. I had an Xbox for a bit. It was on there. PS4. It was on there. So you can play Smite anywhere. It's cross-platform now. They did that a little while into the lifespan of Smite 1.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that game just got canned. I had to, in real time, as I was making this list, change it to inactive when like a week of starting this because the whole high res thing that happened, the
Yep.
layoffs that happened. So yeah, unfortunately, you can't play Smite 1 anymore. But Smite 2 is right around the corner, and it's kind of just to say it's Unreal 5, crazy lighting, brand new character models, the same
Yeah.
the same
The
kind of
works.
selling points. But I think Smite's a sick game. It definitely is inspired by League of Legends. This is where you start getting the inspired by League of Legends games, right? We're straying from the Dota model and we're sticking to the League model.
Well, yeah. So I actually like looking at the list. I think at this point we can bundle a few things together, like
Yes.
to just keep it moving, right? Because we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about Smite. I
Yes.
think if you look in like the era of like 2014, right? Like 2014 by
Mm-hmm.
itself, you have multiple MOBAs that popped up.
This is kind of
Um,
the start of the boom, right? This is where we're getting into a lot of MOBAs are being made and a lot of them are being advertised in very quick succession, right? 2014 was
well,
a
yeah.
huge year. That's like
and
what was that
and
one,
there
two,
it's
three?
where now people like you said we now have
Yeah.
two foundations in which you can build your game upon, be it League of Legends or the Dota philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have people 2014, it takes a couple years as people start to churn this stuff out, but now Smite is kind of the start of this era where people are not only making MOBAs, they are actively trying to twist them into something new and different.
Yes.
Smite takes on like a third person perspective, which is, absolutely strange. Never
But
been seen before.
as we saw, not the first one though.
Yeah, no,
because we
I
had
mean not
Monday
the
Night
first
Combat.
one, but like it's the first
The,
like
the
popular
way
one.
they the way they executed it was it's
Yeah.
familiar to MOBA players. It's not like a different type of game with MOBA elements. It is a MOBA in a different viewport.
No, yeah, exactly. It is
Hmm.
shifting that around. You see, like Dawngate shows up, right? And like this is Electronic Arts trying to get in on something.
Yep,
You've got Vainglory, which is trying to target a mobile market, like
that's my
it
next one.
is yeah, I was gonna say because I think you can group this all together because like I said, it is part of this era of like shit showing up to. This is where the first big swings at trying
Yeah,
to twist things around and make it different are.
this is the first big boom. We've got four more big booms
Yeah.
to get through. But AJ and Big Justice are gonna end up on the thumbnail at some point. I don't know
W
how,
shit.
but they'll be here.
W
But
shit.
yeah, so that's the draw of Smite. We get Vainglory around the same time. Vainglory,
Mhm.
again, following the League of Legends design philosophy, right? Because Smite
Yeah.
kind of did that very loosely, and focusing more on like the damage types, right? The thing that League of Legends did to separate itself from Dota and make itself simpler was Dota, if you don't already know, if you're not a Dota player, has attributes for their stats, very similar to an RPG. Heroes are divided into three categories of strength, agility, and intelligence as a primary attribute, and then you build out your character based upon that. They now have universal as well in Dota 2, which is you just gain stats from all of them equally, and they've tuned a lot of the characters around that. It's broken. I don't care what anybody says. Universal heroes are fucking disgusting, and that's coming from a guy that plays one. So that being said, League of Legends went and they're like, we have two damage types, right? So you have, your movement stats, your armor, and everything. That's all stats that you get from items and separate, right? So
Yeah.
it keeps that RPG feel, but it streamlines it, right? You're not building out like a tabletop RPG character where you have your
No,
strength stat
everything in
that
League
affects
falls
things.
under two categories. It is
Yes.
is it attack damage
Is
is it
it
attack damage based
yeah?
or is it magic damage based?
Is it
And that
magical or is it
applies
physical?
both offensive and defensive. Like
Yes. And Smite kind of does that where certain roles are locked into Smite 1 at least. They're locked into specific damage types, right? So guardians, mages can only have magic damage. They can only build magic damage. The shop won't even show you physical items. You can only build magic items on those characters. Meanwhile, assassins and fighters will have physical. And so then you'll get a couple characters, like you'll get mages that work in the jungle, same with assassins or same with fighters, right? Same with some tanks, like guardians is what they're called. And you'll get some interplay with that, like, okay, we have more damage oriented magical items versus defensive oriented or support oriented magical items, things like that. So but you still see that design philosophy show up in Smite, and you see it again in Vainglory when Vainglory has the crystal versus weapon type or damage types, which is just AD and AP. Crystal was your AP, weapon was your AD. The thing that set Vainglory apart was it was designed for iOS, for the iPhone, Apple Arcade. Apple approached Super Evil Megacorp was working on this, and Apple approached them, or I forgot who approached who, but they made it specifically to be a MOBA experience that you could play on the phone. So it was much smaller scale, 3v3. You had one lane, one jungle. Your roles were laner, jungler, and roamer. And you had a large jungle objective kind of in the middle of it all called the Kraken, which was essentially Rift Herald. Before Rift Herald was a thing, it would, you would kill it, it would spawn in your base, walk down the lane, punch some towers. It was really hard to kill if you didn't have a coordinated team. So you like some game like lower elos games were decided on who took Kraken,
sure.
especially earlier on. That changed as patches went on, but I kind of stuck with Dota, so I fell off of Vainglory for a bit, but I'd come back periodically. I do enjoy the mobile MOBAs. I think there's a space for them, and again, as we've seen playing Honor of Kings now, just hit Diamond. Big ups. I got
W you
bans
should.
now. I
W
don't
you
know
should.
what characters are good, so I'm just not banning anything, and I'm
Nice.
picking the same character every game. I'm using that to carry me to master. We'll see how well that goes. But I think looking back, Vainglory is the quintessential mobile MOBA. You had tap movement to replicate the RTS like clicking movement in traditional MOBAs like League and Dota.
Right.
The gameplay was a bit slower because of that. You look at games like Mobile Legends Bang Bang and Honor of Kings, where they have the twin stick style thing, and they take more after League of Legends. Almost to the there was a point where they had to sue Mobile Legends because they were just ripping characters, and the name, right?
Gotta love
So
that.
yeah, so they lost the lawsuit and had to change to Mobile Legends Bang Bang, which is yeah whatever. But the thing that kind of killed the game, from what I could find, was the development of 5v5. All the resources kind of went into that and shifting the game balance to 5v5. So the game kind of took a hit. It was never really meant to be that, and it makes me sad because Vainglory, even watching like Vainglory Esports early in the day, there was so much potential for that game. And now they're partnered with Netflix, so I hope they can bring it back, but I doubt anything's gonna happen. Unfortunately, this game is a loss of time. If I'm not mistaken, it's still playable on mobile. It was on PC for a bit,
Sensible.
but I tried playing it on PC to get some more research done for this video, and it just loaded me into like a JPEG of the main screen. So I don't know
Nice.
if I did something wrong, but as far as I know, it's playable. Moving on, Here's of the Storm. We've kind of oh, hold on, I've got some asterisks in here. S2
Okay.
Games put out a game called Strife around this time, between Heroes of the Storm and
2015,
Vainglory.
according to the
2015.
thing here. Yes.
And then before that, Warner Brothers put out
Oh, Infinite
Infinite
Crisis. Yeah.
Crisis, which infamously known, the Batman MOBA. Everybody knows the game existed. People want it
Yeah.
back.
I was
I'm
gonna say, I feel like
I'm
this was
indifferent.
part of, yeah, just like
It was part of that level. This is the second big boom where everybody was kind of making like the cash grab MOBAs, like
well, yeah,
everything's a
it's
MOBA.
interesting because yeah, like you said, it's a big Western property that gets converted into a MOBA,
Yeah,
which is interesting, right, to say the least.
yeah.
But yeah, from what I know, historically, not a great one.
They did like the multiverse thing where you have different versions of the characters as different characters. So like Gotham by Gaslight, Joker was just the Pudge of the
Yeah.
game, right? You had like different versions of Flash and Superman, like what was it, Red Sun Superman, stuff like that
Red
in the
Sun
game.
Superman, yeah, those
So
kinds of things, Bizarro and all this
yeah,
shit.
so and they all had different abilities, and
No,
for
it's neat conceptually. Like I said,
yeah,
I think it shows where MOBAs are at, that people are trying to get, you have a Warner Brothers Interactive trying to take their piece of the pie using
right,
a massive IP like DC just to do that.
yeah, no, exactly. You also have like 40K Dark Nexus, but that one also had twin stick controls, goaded, but it's Games Workshop, so yeah. So Infinite Crisis and Strife. Strife was supposed to be the the S2 games. Remember S2 games with Han? Yeah, they tried to make
Yeah.
League of Legends this time, and they made it very very easy, very pick up and play. The game is still playable, kind of in Europe.
Okay.
It's got like no players, but the game is like in an eternal maintenance mode. So there's like a single server cab that is running this game right now and hosting the like 12 people that still play it from time to time.
That's kind of a W.
Advertised as the casual MOBA, because it's supposed to be quick games, pretty easy to pick up and learn. Very League inspired. So like it took League and it tried to like dumb it down even further. And yeah, it didn't last very long because S2 games, and I don't know if Malikan had any influence on Strife but as far as I know, the Malikan rug pull continues through the legacy of these games.
Nice.
And apparently soon with Han Reborn, we'll see about
W
that. We'll
shit.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But Hots
Yeah.
potatoes.
Good old Hots.
Good old Hots. We talked about Hots pretty in depth early on, so we'll kind of speed through this one a bit more too. But it was Blizzard's foray into MOBAs. Hots came out June 2nd, 2015, developed and published by Blizzard Entertainment. Brought, Heroes of Warcraft, StarCraft, some original characters, Overwatch.
Much later, but yes. Yeah, the
Yeah.
original characters eventually happened. Not very many of them, I believe. In game to this point, there is two, maybe three max on originals.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. I mean, I can talk. I played a lot of this game. Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely played a fuck ton of HOTS.
Still play it sometimes,
Both
it's a good time.
both in 1.0 and 2.0. Because this
OG.
game did get supported for a surprising amount of time. I mean, it's still totally playable now, and
Hmm.
it still gets. It got like a balance patch. They happen like once a year, but like they even like go and like weirdly balance patch it. And every time they do it, there's this whole thing where like, guys, HOTS is back, HOTS is back, and it never is.
All
But
they really did is kill esports for it, and they like
yeah,
stopped developing new heroes.
yeah, it's stopped. But yeah, every time it gets a balance patch like once a year, and people every time it does it, there's murmurs that like, oh, maybe they do something new,
It's
yada yada. They never do.
it's the
Um,
TF2 of Blizzard games.
yeah. And yeah, this game, like I said, it was legitimately cool. It's funny to me that it comes after Strife, which sells itself as the casual MOBA, because Hero of the Storm, in my opinion, really was that. It
Yeah, no.
legitimately optimized systems in a way that made the game approachable. It cut in items entirely out of the game, which, like I said, something that people might not know. In the beta for Heroes of the Storm, there were items. They were called artifacts.
I remember that actually.
Yeah, like it had items at one point, and they were called artifacts. It was a whole thing. They ended up taking them out entirely. They just cut all of them from the game because they thought it was too bloated and like they didn't like it. And the game basically just became about all of your like build customization came from hero levels. Every I believe it was every odd level. And there's like a couple in between there,
Hmm.
basically set levels. At set levels, your character would get a pick between a few different perks, and that's kind of how you customized the build of your character. And they got really experimental with this in ways that I thought were very fucking cool. Varian Rin, who is a character from World of Warcraft, he basically, when it became time to pick your ultimate, which I believe is at level 10, it's been a while since I've played,
Hmm.
um, you would essentially choose, did you want him to be a bruiser, like tank, or did you want him to be a burst assassin? And like literally, like the ultimate you picked would determine that. Basically, the way they did it in the game was if you chose him to go two-handed on his sword, he was a burst assassin, very low health, super high burst damage. Or if you chose him to go dual blades, where he had two swords, that was a more bruiser build where he would like drain life. Character absolutely broken on launch, by the way. You would take High King's quest. The second your they instituted quests. This was something that it had a lot of unique shit. Quests was one thing that I thought was kind of neat that showed up later in the game's lifespan, where at certain talents you could take a talent that was a quest talent, and it would basically have you do a thing. And once that thing was done, that could be like pick up X amount of healing orbs, deal X amount of damage, hit every member of the enemy team with an ultimate. That was like a Hanzo quest for one of his things. And basically, once you accomplish the objective, you got like an upgrade on an ability or a thing. He would take a thing called High King's Quest, which basically, if you got enough healing orbs, he just became an unkillable raid boss. Like his lifesteal and durability would go up so high that like he was just fucking insane. Launch Rin was literally broken, like literally broken. You could 1v5 with the character. It was he was insane. Um, but yeah, so the game did really cool shit. Cutting out items I think was huge. But still keeping champions feeling customizable through a talent system was very unique and interesting. it basically eliminated, like, it had lanes, but the lanes were very loose. There was no last hitting. As
Hmm.
long as a minion died, your team got XP. You couldn't fall behind in levels because the levels were bound to teams themselves. So your entire team shared levels and experience. And they really balanced the game. In other MOBAs, I feel like to this point, a lot of these games are balanced around push lane, kill tower. Maybe there's a mid boss to force fights over.
Yeah.
But at the end of the
And get
day, you're trying
Nexus
to,
or
yeah,
main
you're trying to
objective.
push down fucking towers. You're trying to kill a bunch of shit and then get to a nexus and win.
Hmm.
And this maintained the towers and the bases and shit. But the way the maps were balanced was every map had a unique objective, and that objective would massively turn the tide of the way the map was going. So you had to deal with it. It wasn't like an option. It wasn't like, oh, maybe we go to Roshan. It was, if you were on, it wasn't called Booty Bay, but the like the pirate one, that I can't
Pirate,
remember the
yeah.
name
With
of.
the cannonballs that would shoot the.
Yeah, you would basically, at every once in a while, treasure chests would spawn, and you'd have to go hit the treasure chest to get coins. So you
Hmm.
would go there with your team to fight over the coins, and then you would turn the coins into the guy in the middle of the map. And once a team got 10 coins, he would just start fucking artillery striking enemy structures for you.
Yeah.
And like you were forced to deal with that. There was the Undead Mines, a map that quickly got retired because they could never balance it, and every time they tried to rebalance it, it never worked out, so it just stayed retired forever. Where an under section of the map would open up, you would go through these holes in the ground to get to the mines, where you would have to kill skeletons to pick up skulls. And once your team got a certain amount of skulls, you would summon a giant grave golem that would like boss down a lane, and the enemy team would have to address it. Um, and this continued for a while. Eventually, they started making maps. Not only did they make heroes, all of the original maps were like IP agnostic. Like they were kind of referencing shit that you knew, but they actually weren't fully related to a singular thing. It wasn't
Yeah.
until I believe Battlefields of Eternity was the first time they put in a map directly referencing a Blizzard franchise, because Battlefields of Eternity was a Diablo theme map where you'd have angels and demons fighting. Um, they kind of continued that trend going forward. There's a StarCraft map added after that. That was very cool, where you would you would build up like these giant Zerg rushes by controlling objectives, and you would send like a horde of Zerg at the opponent's base, which is very cool. They built an Overwatch map that was based around capture the or push the cart, where you in a MOBA had to Overwatch, get on the fucking supply cart and move it, and then if you got to the end, it became a turret.
You'll see that later in Fangs.
Yeah, yeah, like it's they really, at a certain point, they started bringing the, not, it wasn't at first, like they, like I said, they veered away from keeping the maps were referential in art style to Blizzard shit, but was not directly linked. They eventually, like I said, did away with that and just started making full on, like, these maps are directly from Blizzard properties. They reference mechanics of those games even to a little degree, and really incorporated it into a MOBA style that was interesting, and just all around well put together. And I think that's maybe what separates Heroes from a lot of this other stuff that tries to simplify the genre. One, it's Blizzard; they're very talented, um, but they also put out a very polished, full game. And like this game was just cool. It looked good. Menus looked good. The champions looked good and had cool abilities. Was it perfect? No. I mean, they even themselves had to, at one point, Heroes of the Storm 2.0 it, where they rebalanced everything. They rebalanced talents. They made it so that, before, if minions died, you got XP. If somebody killed minions, if a hero killed minions on the map, you would get XP for that. Your team would.
Yeah.
Basically, this created a problem where certain champions that could kill minions from the other side of the map, a naming Ragnaros was a big one that they released later, where he had an ult where he would literally send a wave of lava down a lane of the map,
It would insta
and
kill everything.
it would kill every enemy minion in the lane. They would just all die. Um, and at level 20, when he got his final talent, he could upgrade that ultimate to two lanes at a time. Very oppressive, was an easy way to generate XP. So in 2.0, they tried to address a lot of this by making laning matter a little bit more, in the sense that basically the way it works now is, instead of a minion dying, just giving you XP, when minions died, they dropped orbs, and then you needed to be somewhat nearby to pick up the orbs, and that's how you got your experience. They also made towers like hurt more. That was a thing around that time, because that game, you could definitely tower dive the shit out of people in Tears of the Storm initially. Um, Especially, there are a lot of like characters that get like kind of blinks and teleports in that game, and like you could just teleport over walls into enemies' bases and just obliterate them, because you didn't have to give a shit about towers and the damage they did to you. Yeah, 2.0 changed a lot. It tried to make stealth characters less annoying, because here's a trivia question
Zeratol
for
was
you
one
and
of
your
them.
knowledge. There's a lot of them. Nova, Zeratol,
Yeah.
even certain characters like Illidan and stuff could pick up talents that gave them minor invisibilities. How many how many MOBAs up to this point had like true invisibility? That was just like, if the character is invisible, you can't see them on the screen. End of
Dota.
story. Okay,
Dota.
so
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, this one also had this. And like I said, you
Ricky
had
was
characters
like the big
like,
one.
yeah, you had characters like Zeratol that were, part of their passive was they would just become invisible, and there was literally just no detection on it. You would either hit him randomly with an ability, like you would just like, because if he was gone, he was gone. And then he would reappear if he attacked you, and it created some really fucked up assassins in that game. So they made some changes to that. Um, yeah, just all in all, I do think like this game was the casual MOBA. It's like I said, it got me into MOBAs, and it did it by not just using the power of Blizzard and the IP, because it did do that very well, but it went out of its way to incorporate all of those characters very neatly and well implemented into a MOBA style, and just made sure that everything was polished to that Blizzard sheen. Like it was all just very.
Yeah.
You could tell it
Very
was high
polished and
effort,
well
like,
packaged.
yeah. But yeah, that's Here's the Storm. That game's great. I love it. I love Here's the Storm.
We gotta play more of it because it is fun. It's fun.
I would be down. I genuinely, yeah, I think that game is super fun. Like, yeah.
Next up, we've got one near and dear, another H game. We're gonna jump a little bit ahead. There's one game in between this. Honorable mention to Arena of Fate, because it was made by Crytek and the CryEngine, which is like,
That's so funny.
yeah, like that's kind of like the novelty of it. Like, why? But yeah. Anyways, Honor of Kings, which we briefly talked about just a bit before this, and that the way this came about is real interesting. So Tencent, as we all know, our supreme Chinese overlords, League of Legends, right? They approached Riot and they're like, "Hey, League of Legends is popping, right? We love it. Everybody loves it. It's making us $1 bajillion, and we want to bring it to the mobile market because the mobile market also makes us $1 bajillion." And they're like, nah, legally, like, it just wouldn't work, right? Mobile MOBAs, they just don't work, right? Meanwhile, we have Vainglory, and Vainglory, it's still, what, 2015? Vainglory's still, like, doing all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, it's not unheard of, but I guess that being your only frame of reference for what a mobile MOBA should be, you're like, we don't want to scale it down. Like, how is a 5v5 going to fit on the phone?
My guess would also be it's probably a matter of resource management, right? Like if you're League of Legends at this point, you're 5 years deep, and it's like, do we really want to allocate resources into mobilizing this game? Like,
Yeah, sorry, I was looking back at a note. Yeah, no, so they just weren't like they just weren't down with the idea. All right, so Tencent's like, fine, you guys won't do it, we'll find somebody else to do it. And they did. They got two like internal studios to do it, and they made two separate games that released at the same time. One of them was like Legend of Kings, and the other one had like another name. And the first one was like popular, and the one that later became Honor of Kings needed to like step its game up, so it did, and then it overtook it, and they kind of just combined and made Honor of Kings. Real weird dev cycle, but Honor of Kings eventually became like the biggest game, like mobile game in China, and subsequently like most of Asia because of that. But there's a Korean release of it, and it eventually got ported over to the West. The first port of Honor of Kings that we got was Arena of Valor. So it wasn't even Honor of Kings, and that one, you know, you've got Batman and shit in that game, right? It was a lot going on in Arena of Valor. That game is on the Switch, like, and it's still being played. Like, there's still AOV tournaments, and it's still being supported and updated. But Honor of Kings, now that there's a official global release, you're seeing a lot more international teams outside of like Korea and China showing up to the KPL and stuff like that.
Now you have like actual parity, right? So it's going to inherently make people play, as opposed to playing like this offshoot version that, you know, exists.
Yeah. So that was Honor of Kings. That's the story of that. And then later on, as we all know, Riot Games made League of Legends Wild Rift after Tencent's like, see, it can be done. Listen to your overlords.
True.
And that was kind of that. But here we get into another boom. Like we're coming out of the 2014, 2015, early 2016, right? And we're getting into, now everybody's making one. A bunch of indie studios, a bunch of big studios, right? We're getting into a lot of sequels as well. This is where we start getting our first kind of, you know, outside of Dota 2, we're getting, you know, kind of re-releases of older titles, maybe reimaginings of some stuff. So you've got Mobile Legends Bang Bang and Dead Breed. Dead Breed, put the first one out there. This is the next lightning round, by the way. We're just gonna speed through all these. Dead Breed was like a gothic horror MOBA with like RPG aspects where you would pick a character and then you would pick like, remember what was that Mortal Kombat game where you had like a fighting style that you could pick?
Mortal Kombat game. I don't even remember.
Yeah, they added like maybe it was X or something like that. Like you picked not like a fighting style, but you picked like there was like different versions of the character that you could pick from.
Variations. That was I believe X. Yeah, where every character had 3 variations. Yeah.
So you had that where it's like, okay, you pick a character, but they've got like a mage variation,
that's interesting,
tank variation, and like a fighter variation, right? And that was like or a support variation, right? And that was like your thing. And you pick like a weapon to go along with it. So you could pick like tome, hammer, things like that. It was pretty cool. It was a neat concept. Didn't really land. Went offline after a couple of years. It was super sick though. It's not playable anymore, unfortunately. It's not even listed on Steam, but it was cool. MLBB, talked about that. Moonton Games, they got sued by Riot, and that was it. Paragon, this is a huge one. Epic Games.
Yep. Another big one.
If we're gonna do like, you know, the comparison here, if Smite is to League of Legends and Paragon is to Dota, it took the Smite formula, added a bit more to it, added verticality. You know,
I think leans more into the shooter department as well. You know,
yeah.
Things like that.
State of the art though, you had it got just like Heroes of Storm, it got a 2.0 update with the Monolith update, and that was a huge thing. It was on console and PC. And another crazy thing about this game, did you play Paragon at all?
No. I know my experience with Paragon was I always knew it existed, and I remember looking at it and being like, oh, that seems kind of cool. Never touched it. But I do know that game had it had a niche following for like a long time of like people that really liked it. It just kind of never took off.
Yeah, it mainly because of the item system. So the item system in Paragon was a deck of cards. So it's like literally a deck of cards. Like you would pull booster packs of cards, and those were your items, and you had to put them into your build. And if you didn't have cards, then you had to buy the cards. And it was around the time that Hearthstone was doing well, so like they just combined card game and MOBA,
Nice.
and it didn't stick because it was kind of pay to win,
seems awful.
because you know, if you whale out for all the best cards, you can make whatever build you want, and you can play meta decks and this, that, and the other, and for a
that
MOBA
seems like a problem.
it doesn't really work out as well as people might think. There is on lanepushinggames.com I found it. I forgot the name of it, but it's like a deck builder kind of thing where like you have a deck for your abilities are your deck, right? And as the game progresses, you will draw your abilities. So at like any given time, you can like play your ability. A bit more strategy in that. I can see that working out. And as long as you don't have to buy the abilities with real money to put into your character's deck, should be fine. Right. Battle Right, the sequel to Bloodline Champions. I love this game. This game is still playable. Unfortunately not active, not receiving any updates or anything like that. Maybe a balance or something like that. As far as I know, there's like one guy still like working on it and keeping it kind of afloat. Stunlock Studios has since shifted all their stuff to V Rising, which has a lot of Battle Right inspired things in it.
It's so funny. I forget that game is done by them because it is so different. But yeah, good game. And I mean, I see why that game does make the money. It's obviously a pretty popular game. So
V Rising's cool. Battle Right was sick. I hope to God this game can come back. Unfortunately, the thing that killed Battle Right wasn't. It was kind of bad management. They focused too much and too early into esports, because this was at the time that esports were kind of showing up in the mainstream. Right, this is when you were getting. This is 2016, right? So you were getting those like big billionaire investors going into esports, like, oh, new market, right? Venture capitalists were getting into. They're just like, we need to crank up esports and we need to get like these investors, and they went all in on esports. It wasn't an established like property yet, like League or Dota was, so they didn't have enough resources. Go ahead.
Well, just to give everyone some perspective on like how big we're talking at this point. 2016 is the year that League of Legends, the LCS finals, sold out Madison Square Garden. Like that's where we were at right now.
Yeah. So this
to show you like the kind of potential people are looking to chase in this year with stuff like that.
So they went all in, and it ruined their financials because they had no money to update the game, and
it also felt to me a little bit, as someone who played that game a fair bit, liked it, and even had friends who don't normally play MOBAs like playing it, because that game is just team fight simulator in a cool way, and like I genuinely enjoy that. It's like, okay, you have MOBA style heroes. What if it was fuck a map, fuck a like minions and lanes, just team fight, like team fight in these arenas, and it's very cool and neat, and I do think it is one of the best variations of them taking like, okay, we like MOBA style characters, but what if you removed the lanes and minions? What does that look like? And it turns out it's great. But it's phenomenal. It does seem like they suffered from some trend chasing, just in general, both in an esports front. And I mean, even in that last update where they tried to turn it into a battle royale, which is like, what are you doing? Like, you're missing the point. Like,
well, not entirely, because that's how we got Supervive, really. Supervive is just battle royale.
Yeah, but I have opinions or thoughts on that. But yeah, that's the weakest part of that game. And
they hated Jesus because he spoke the truth.
Yeah. But like I said, I think the worst parts of Supervive is battle royale stuff. Like,
true, arenas are the best mode, but
yeah,
you know, Atlas Reactor came out. Atlas Reactor's sick. Not the biggest Alpharad fan, but he does have a good video on Atlas Reactor from like way back in the day before he was what he is now. So
true.
That's pretty cool. Also on the battle right thing, shout out my boy Eli. He hates MOBAs. He refuses to play them. He got like mad drunk one day and played the best Morgana game of his life, and that was it. He swore to never touch it again. Got on to play Battle Right, loved it. He's like, this is the most fun I've had in a while. So if you guys haven't checked out Battle Right, please install it and play this game. It's so sick. Super fun. It's so sick. MXM, this game just became playable again. Master X Master, it was everything I wanted in a MOBA, right? Twin stick controls, 5v5 map, right? Traditional MOBA gameplay, minus the items. There's no items, and the gimmick is that you pick two characters and you can switch between them freely, like on a short cooldown. And that was kind of it.
Neat concept. Yeah.
No, yeah, it was cool. NCSoft did it, so you had a lot of like Guild Wars characters and City of Heroes characters. You had some Blade and Soul
Blade and
characters.
Soul. Yeah.
They had a couple unique ones too.
Yeah, fun. I always find the unique ones funny when you're doing like this franchise one because, like, for those who don't know, two of the most broken characters in Heroes of the Storm's history were two of its unique characters in Orphea and the fucking hunter sword lady that they introduced later. That I don't remember her name, but yeah, they make original characters and they were absolutely fucked. Beyond belief. Orphea, one of the coolest champ concepts. Ambessa before Ambessa, but Ambessa was a mage. All I'm saying. No, it was sick.
Yeah,
Orphea, like one of the things that made Orphea cool was you could pick up a passive early on where, so she was a mage, but if you hit her spells, anytime you would hit a spell, you were allowed to dash in any direction. So by hitting her spells, you could then like use it to dash in, to chase, or like dash back to kite. But it wasn't just like, you know how Mbessa is just like you kind of cast it and it gives you the dash on like whatever. This was, it required, Orphea required you to hit.
Interesting.
Very, very cool MOBA champion. Very cool MOBA champion.
Yeah. What are we? Next time, Gigantic. This game also came back thanks to Gearbox. It's fuck Randy Pitchford daily though. Guys, guys. I have it labeled as an active because I forgot to change it. Really, it's playable. They re-released the game with Gigantic Rampage Edition, and because I'm a fan of the game, I thought it was sick. It does the battle right thing where it takes it's the Smite version of battle right, if you want to look at it that way. It's third person, very hero shooter-esque because of the camera angle. Right, but it's got similar MOBA objectives. You have a large structure. In this case, it's like a beast that you have to find your openings based on taking objectives to destroy, and then that. So you take these control points around the map. You build little like guys on them. Some heal, some are like towers, some create walls of different effects, and based on how many points you have by controlling these points, you make the enemy's guardian vulnerable. And then when they're vulnerable, you can go and you can attack it and do damage. They have like 3 pips of health, so every time you break one, it'll reset. And you have to kind of do that loop over again. It was quick. Games would take maybe like 20 to 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes is like a long time, but that's, if you were coordinated and you're just playing casual matches, right, they would go pretty quickly. But yeah, the game came back as Gigantic Rampage Edition, but the problem is they released it in the same state that it died in, with minor changes and 2 characters that like never released in the main game because it got shut down. So we didn't get anything new. They're not updating the game. They're not treating it as a live service model. They just, I guess for the sake of preservation, brought the game back, and that was it.
We'll take that. We'll take a
it's not bad. Listen, Gigantic is a fun game. You level up by, well, when you get levels, all your abilities have like a talent tree. So you choose which ability you want to level, and then from there you choose which talent you want to give that ability, and that's how you level them up. So they get different effects. Like I played Trip, and my slide could either like do a knock up, or I could get like 2 of them or something like that. I forget exactly what it is, but or like your throwing your throwing knife could do like a bleed effect, or it'll stun, stuff like that.
Yeah. Very well. Kind of Here's the Stormy, to be honest.
Yeah, no, very very HOTS inspired, right? With the skill trees and everything. Brawl Stars is the next one I want to give mention to. That game is still active, still playable. Hella Puerto Ricans play it. I'm one of them. It's sick. I think it's very fun. It's fun in a casual sense. It scratches the battle right itch that I have. And I can play it on my phone, so I can play it at any time. And It's cool to level up characters. All the characters look very fun. It's got a real cute style. I highly recommend it if you've got space on your phone or whatever. It's a good time. It's a fun game. Genesis. This is the third to last game I have on this lightning round. Genesis was a console MOBA that you could also play on PC, but the gimmick was you had to play it with controller. So it was isometric, very Dota-esque, in terms of map layout, in terms of characters, things like that. But yeah, everything was mapped to the DualShock 4, which was pretty cool. It's a neat concept. You can find gameplay of it. Inactive. Just, I think the devs went under or something like that. I don't know. It showed up, it advertised a bunch, and then it disappeared. Didn't have the sticking power. I played, I think this is like Hades was the guy. He was pretty cool. He's kind of like Swain. And there was like a crocodile guy named Jewel. Electrical, like crocodile guy. Yeah, crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But next, Marvel Super War. It's Marvel. It's a MOBA. It's for your phone. It's by NetEase. So this predates Marvel Rivals. Proto Marvel Rivals, if you will.
Yeah,
That's about all I
got
gotta
it.
say. It plays like Mobile Legends or Honor of Kings. It's standard. Had some cool characters, and obviously it's a Marvel game, but had some cool like concepts for how they would translate into a MOBA. My favorite one is Thanos. His passive was like a quest passive,
Oh,
where
that's cool.
you would have to find the Infinity Stones, and if you got all the Infinity Stones, you would just instant kill half the lobby. Like that was your ult. Like you would have to gather the Infinity Stones by like going around the jungle and like fighting people and jungle
That's
objectives and things like that.
pretty
And then once
sick.
you gathered all five, you could use your snap as like your ult, and you would just delete three people from the game. So yeah, that was pretty sick. I think now that I think about it, I think Black Panther's kit in Super War is his kit in Marvel Rivals. Like his ult was the giant panther, and it would execute. Like it was nuts. Eternal Return. This is our first foray into the MOBA BR hybrid. You would pick a starting area, find materials. You would have to craft your items. You would have to plan your map rotations. Played like a traditional MOBA. You know, right click, four abilities, passive, very League inspired. Super popular in like Europe and Korea, obviously Korean game. But there's like a decent European scene for it, and yeah, still active, still playable. They keep releasing new characters. The game looks great. It's decently fun to play. I like it. Not too many people I know do. So, you know. And here
It's
we
the BR
have,
stuff that kills it for me.
yeah, I can see that being an issue.
Um,
Getting third partied and it's getting ganked. Like the
It's
game
just
playing
like
in a
looking
MOBA being
around for
ganking
items,
is
really. That's
just
actually like what kind of kills it, in my opinion. It's just like I don't want to fucking have to. Yeah,
yeah. No,
I think it's. But yeah, I think conceptually it is cool.
yeah.
I like some of the character designs too, but you know that's anime pilled.
Next up, this is a big topic one that I have. This is like the final kind of big topic, and then we've got the modern era where I've got a special question for you, Tony. But we have Pokemon
Yes.
Unite. Pokemon Unite, well, it took the MOBA scene by storm when it came out. Because like, why the
Yep.
fuck is Pokemon making a MOBA? Why hasn't it been done sooner? Because it makes so much
Massive
sense. When
franchise.
Pokemon level up,
Yeah.
they evolve. That make that a mechanic, right? And that's what they did, and it works.
Yep.
It's very simple. It's very accessible. Kids can play it. The only problem, it's pay to win. Or at
Yeah.
least it was. I don't
That's
know if that still exists, but
yeah. That game to me like I just feel like it was simplified to a point where I had already grown past the desire to play something that simplified. I
Yeah.
think conceptually it was cool. I remember hearing really terrible shit about the pay to win stuff. Like literally just some of
Yeah.
those Pokemon in that game, the ones that you paid for were legitimately just head and shoulders of better than other ones.
Not even the
Better
Pokemon. It was the
items.
items that you
Yeah,
would
I would
pay
say
for.
items.
Yeah.
Yeah, like item sets and shit. Just really being insane. And just out balancing it.
Mhm.
Um, I think the ball objective stuff is a little whack too, but like maybe that's better in practice on
The
play. Like
scoring
the
and like the control
yeah.
points are like it's whatever. I don't think it really matters. I think like getting knocked out of securing the points feels kind of bad because like it's not like you drop the points, you just kind of lose them or something like that. It's not perfect. There is
Nah.
allegedly an update coming, maybe a Unite 2 for Switch 2. The Chinese version is like way different, and people are like freaking out about that right now. So something to look forward to. It's also got auto chess, which is pretty gnarly.
That's
Pokemon auto
interesting. I
chess,
actually didn't know.
not
I
bad.
didn't know that. No.
Yeah. There is a Pokemon auto chess fan made that you can play if the servers are available. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're like full and you can't play the game, but
That's funny.
that's what that is. But yeah, I I left this one in because I specifically have a Google Plus post from like 2014 where I pitched a Pokemon MOBA. It'll be somewhere in the description or like a pinned comment or something like that of the picture. I have it somewhere. I'm still looking for it. I felt very vindicated when this game came out. I'll just leave it at that. That's kind of where we are. We've reached kind of the modern era. We still have some like Omega Strikers, predecessor Supervive, right? Smite
Well,
2.
now, so I think it's interesting you bring, yeah, because we are in the modern era and we are sort of past the boom. And I think now we're in an era where people aren't just doing straight up rips anymore, right?
Yeah.
And it's because you have entered a point where there's less people desiring MOBAs outside of established MOBA players. And nowadays, if you're gonna make something, you need to make something compelling enough that people who have 10 years, 15 years of investment in League, 10 years investment in Dota, all of this stuff, why should they come to your game? And I think because of that, most people have given up on the traditional MOBA, right? That's why you're seeing weird stuff. Supervive, Omega Strikers, Deadlock. Like outside of like the revitalization of old shit, right? Like a Smite 2 sequel or a predecessor, which is, the revivals of
Yeah.
Paragon. And like here's
In
the Newerth
in
Reborn
in
and
better
shit like
fashion
that.
too, because you
Yeah,
got
where it's
items
like
now.
trying to take those games and update them. Those are trying to recapture an older game and like bring them back, right? But as far as
Yeah.
new games, if you look at the new games sort of coming to the space and taking from the idea, there are very different takes on it. I mean, Omega Strikers is supposed to be like a almost like a sport game with like MOBA mechanics, or like hero mechanics, right? Like not even MOBA mechanics in the sense of lanes, but like taking the MOBA champion concept and applying it to a sport style team game. Um, and Supervive, like you said, taking MOBA champions and applying them to a battle royale format,
Mhm.
and skipping some of the things that suck about prior attempts at it. I think that game did a lot of work in addressing shit like I think what they do with the level cap is smart, making the level cap there's an actively moving level cap as the zoning closes. That level cap is breakable by killing other, teams, so
Mhm.
it incentivizes early fighting, which is cool. It's probably very smart for a game like that. Um, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We reached a point where the mainstays have kind of solidified themselves, and now with all the other failed attempts, like many of the games we've listed are inactive or unplayable in some extent, or you need to do some crazy hoops like playing Adventure Time Battle Party, for those that remember that one, where the Cartoon Network browser MOBA. You have to go to like a GitHub repository. Same with Prime World to get the game to play, and it's playable by fans and stuff like that. Very grassroots, but the ones that are staying, right? The Omega Strikers and the Supervives, right? The and this is where we make the joke of the ex Riot devs have been working on these, right? Even what
And
was
I
it,
mean, Omega
Fangs and all
Strikers
that
is
too.
like, I think it's like publicly known that that game struggles. Like they had a massive drop in players between their beta and like release, and like they've been trying to, like that game is
Yeah.
like kind of primed for like a 2.0. I feel like any
Yeah.
time now.
No, I think it's got a very
And
dedicated community,
yeah,
and with the success of Supervive, I feel like since they're similar in mechanics, right? Outside of the sports thing and battle royale, but like the way they feel, the way they play, I feel like there's
yeah.
an easy
And I
transition between the
like
two
Omega Strikers.
for
I
people.
actually played a
Yeah.
decent amount of that
And it
game.
was on
Not
everything, dude.
like
It was
crazy.
on everything. It was
Yeah.
on PC, it was on mobile, PlayStation, Xbox. It was cross play with those two. Gnarly game, dude. Gnarly game. But
Yeah.
we jump into some of these new ones, the up and comers, right? We've got Deadlock, which is active,
Yeah.
in active development. We have a whole episode on that, so we can probably skip over Deadlock.
Mhm.
But Sparkball.
Another one though, showing the example of they're not just trying to be League of Legends or Dota, right? Like they are.
Actually, I do have a segment on Deadlock. So if I may,
Mhm.
just dive
Yeah.
into that real quick.
Yeah.
What do we know about Deadlock? Right? It's got what, 4 lanes, right? You've
Yeah.
got a big mid objective.
Mm.
You've got outside side camps, and this got me thinking. I was thinking about the layout of it, and I'm like, this sounds familiar because I had known about the the thirst for gamma or whatever it's called. Yeah, thirst for gamma from a Dota history video. I believe it's also on the Wikipedia Dota history like timeline that they have, which you should definitely go check out if you haven't kind of read through that. It's got a bunch of links to other things and a bunch of references that you can check to kind of dive deeper into what we're talking about today. But Thirst for Gamma was Yule's attempt in 2020, 2004, 2004 to make a sequel to Dota. And I was like, damn, like there's something here between this and Deadlock. I don't know if Deadlock is being worked, if Yule has any say in this, but it's very like the map. I'm gonna send you a picture of the map right now in our call to take a look at that. That's the proposed map, right? And it was
Okay.
playable. Like there was like a somewhat playable version of the Thirst for Gamma. Didn't really catch on though. Too many mechanics. Like it kind of got like design creeped. Like there was just too much going
Mhm.
on. The idea of
Oh god.
there's like villages that you can ally yourself with
Yeah, I was
around the
gonna
map,
say
and then
like
they would
neutral
like
towns and shit.
yeah, and then they would also like help push down your lane and stuff like that. And there was like different shops scattered everywhere, and it was like more of like an RPG and like open world like exploration, but it was a MOBA.
Jeez.
But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
I
but
can see.
I see a lot of the similarities between, and there also was like Magic the Gathering inspired. There's like a graph of like the colors because one of
Oh,
Jules'
they had like
inspirations
okay.
for Dota and everything was Magic the Gathering. So this whole breakdown and then new map. Sorry, I'm like bombarding you with these images, but new map, the second go around. Gamma 2, Electric Boogaloo. We've got
Jesus
you know
Christ.
yeah, like the Night Elf themed side bays, the Naga themed side bay, like all that. Like it gets crazy. It gets crazy, and didn't really catch on. But I see a lot of the multiple lanes, like the 5 lanes, the 4 lanes. I see that in Deadlock, and I'm like, man, there's like something was here.
Yeah. I mean, I think is what? Deadlock is what? 6v6, 5v5, 6v6. Um,
Something like that, yeah.
yeah. So like,
Deadlock is 6v6,
cause
yeah, yeah. I don't know why
yeah,
I
I
like
say
I
six v
blanked on that.
six because
Yeah,
it's
six v
it's
six,
yeah
yeah.
it's two person lanes and then one two single lanes. So I think yeah, upping it to 6v6 inherently requires the addition of an additional lane. I get why having a 6v thing on a 3 lane map probably doesn't work. Because it's like, are you gonna do like at that point? It's like, okay, what are you gonna do? Duo jungler mid, or are you gonna do 3 duo lanes, or like what? Um, But I think by making it 4 lanes, you create, two solos and then two duos. Um, it works. Yeah, Deadlock's so weird because Deadlock is just strange. And not in a bad way, in like a good way. Like
Yeah.
I think it's really cool, but it is weird because it's like at first are like people are like you hear people throw around the word Overwatch and then you play it and you realize like that is so far off the mark. Because that game is a MOBA. Like that game is a MOBA.
Yeah.
It is a MOBA that plays like a shooter, but is a MOBA. Like you need to last hit, you need to creep deny, you need to farm jungle camps, you need to do all of this stuff, and your champion operates more like a third-person shooter, hero shooter, than it does a traditional MOBA champion. But
Right.
like the fundamentals of the phase of the game and the way the game works is more MOBA than it is any shooter.
Also, the
Um,
itemization was another thing that I was like, wait, this is similar because what deadlock itemization you have the weapon, the spirit, and the vitality, right? This one was you could pick a
yeah.
one of each armor type. So you had a weapon, shield, armor, helmet, jewelry, and accessory,
Mhm.
right? Very very WoW, very World of Warcraft, right?
Yeah.
Like RPG gearing, but
Yeah.
you can only pick one of each, and that was another thing. So I'm like, I'm seeing the similarities, man. I'm connecting the dots. Part of my red string like theory board that I've got
Yeah.
going on here.
It's interesting because it definitely feels like someone was like, the way things went in Valve is it definitely feels like someone was like, hey man, I got this crazy thing I want to do. I want to take Dota. Like, what if we made Dota play like a third person shooter?
Hmm.
And it definitely gives me that vibe. I mean, even down to some of the itemization, there are items in there that are basically literally just blink dagger, like but it's in Dota, like they call it like fucking blinkstone or whatever the fuck, like, um, yeah. But I think it lends credence to the fact that we are in an era where it's not enough to make another League of Legends, another Dota anymore. Like you need to have something now that spins your game into something different that lets it exist on its own. And those are really the only games that can exist in our current climate.
Yeah,
For the need of a MOBA in 2025.
but to kind of cap this off, right? Because I made you do some homework. I gave you a little project to work
Mhm.
on, right?
Mhm.
With the announcement of Han Reborn and the announcement of Sparkball. If you haven't been following Circuits and Shields, it was another sports MOBA similar to Omega Strikers, being developed by Opti Games. Had a whole thing where they were selling like NFTs and they were like integrating Web3 into their game design. There's an article on that on Lane Pushing that I saw that seemed pretty interesting. I'll get back to that. Maybe we have an episode on Web3 and games and esports, how that's going to work, right? Because what's going to fund these things? Maybe crypto is the move. I don't know.
Kill me.
Yeah, I
That's that's what I say to that. But
listen.
yeah.
Listen, man, and anything is possible, but because I'm not gonna be a crypto bro about it and be like, this needs to happen. I've also put a link. You have access to this document, and maybe I'll make it public. But there's a link on that opens up the Sparkball like crypto thing. Both I bring up the crypto thing because both of the platforms that Han Reborn and Sparkball exist on are separate platforms, but the iGames platform for Han Reborn also has crypto capabilities on it, and people are like, "Oh, it's
Jesus.
just gonna be like a fucking crypto miner. You're gonna
I
install it
say
in
they're using
Malikan."
my shit to mine, yeah.
Yeah, and Malikan, the rug pull, soap selling.
Aficionado. Yeah.
There's another thing with some adult video industry stuff in there. Scam artist
I would say you gotta love it.
that he is the CEO of iGames, which is the engine that Han Reborn is being built on. So, that's why earlier I said waiting for the rug pull because the community seems to be waiting for the rug pull. There's people that are pretty hopeful, and I'll if it does work and last, I will play it, but you know,
Yeah. No, I
But
get
yeah,
that.
so they're crowdfunding. Han Reborn is crowdfunding for their platform. One of the one of the donation goals, one of the stretch goals, is not a Steam release, but instead you get to design and work with the Kongor team because it's the people that rebuilt the game to make it playable in the modern era. Kongor
Mm.
for Project Kongor, which is just Han. They've they've announced that you can work directly with the team to design a character that will be in Han Reborn, which I think is pretty sick. I think it's pretty cool. You know, you don't see that outside of like Lego sweepstakes where it's like a build a thing and we'll
True.
put it in Bionicle, right?
Yeah.
So I task
Magic the
you.
Gathering does it with their tournament winner. Pretty cool.
Yeah, they get to make a card, right?
Yeah,
So I
they
task
get to
you
yeah pitch a card. Yeah.
with pitching me some heroes or characters, MOBA characters that you would like to see in a game. It could be any game, it doesn't have to be Han or Dota or League, but what's a concept that you would like to see brought to life in these games if you had the option to develop a character or multiple characters?
So, I love this kind of shit. For those who do not know, I am a multi. I have been a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons campaigns for many a year. I love encounter design. I think it's super fun. I like designing custom monsters and boss encounters and things like that. So I love design inherently. I like game design just in general. It's fascinating. I listen to all sorts of high level analysis of games that I don't play, just because I inherently like to see the way rules interact. Um,
This guy watches GDC.
I dude, I the biggest example I can point to is like I listen to not like an insane amount, but more Yu-Gi-Oh content than I should for someone who has not touched that card game since I was in middle school and has no intention of playing it. But I just hear about high level shit because it's intriguing. So yeah, you told me, all right, design a champion. I was like, all right, cool, I can do that. And I thought about it, and I want to say this is interesting because when you really sit down and you try to design a champion, I didn't design this with a specific game in mind. I think if you look at the kit, I didn't like put numbers or anything like that because like we don't really have specifics to put numbers on. And I think if you look at the kit, it probably fits more into like a League of Legends because that's what I'm more familiar with than anything else. But
Yeah.
it was supposed to be a little design agnostic. So but I found the thing I found was interesting that really gives me a lot of respect for people designing champions and stuff. Because I know everyone loves to meme on like League of Legends every time a new champion comes out. Fucking 3,000 years of game design, all that shit. Um, it's tough. So like I was designing a character. Like when I designed this character, when you're just in a vacuum, man, it can come from a variety of places where it's like, okay, maybe I have an idea for an ability. What is the rest of the kit? Maybe I have an idea for an ultimate. What does the rest of
Yeah.
the kit look around that? Maybe I have an idea on a full-on character concept, and I have to design abilities around that. And for this one, it kind of all started from an ultimate, and then my thought process on the ultimate expanded to a general character concept, and then from that character concept, I created the full kit. So what I
Hmm.
have for you today is a full kit with a passive, a Q, a W, an E, and an R. Um, the code name for this here character concept that I came up with was Carnage Connoisseur.
Okay.
Um, so I'm gonna give we'll start from the passive and I'll give you the passive first and then I'll give you the ultimate and then I'll give you the Q, the W, the E. Because I think you need to understand something about the ultimate to make some of the other stuff make sense. So his passive, this passive. So whenever a champion, I will be referring at this point because I don't want to say Carnage Connoisseur every time, so we're gonna refer to him as CC going forward.
Okay.
Uh,
Welcome to
Whenever a
CC's.
champion within a short to medium distance of CC takes damage from another champion, so like if he deals the damage or your ally gets dealt damage by an enemy champion or your ally deals damage to an enemy champion, as long as a champion is taking, besides himself, is taking damage from another champion, they become what I call stained for 10 seconds.
Mhm.
The timer on stain resets every time they take damage from another champion. CC has increased movement when moving towards a stained champion, and auto attacks against a stained champion gain vamp. I think in League of Legends terms, think of him as like a bruiser style champion, kind of drain tanky. Think like maybe Aatrox, but less burst potential.
Mhm.
Um, so, and when Stained falls off, so if the thing falls off after 10 seconds, Stain cannot be reapplied to the target for 8 seconds. So yeah, the idea is whenever any champion is taking damage from another champion, they gain this sort of like thing, this status effect that I called stained, like a blood stain, and that status effect interacts with CC's kit inherently. It makes him move more faster towards stained targets, ally or enemy, and against enemies, he gains additional vamp to just kind of maintain that drain like lifesteal style. So his R is the first ability I came up with. It's I really like it. I called it Violent Entry. So you essentially the way I had it designed is you use an ally as a portal. So think of like Shen ult from League of Legends, right? You know how Shen ults on somebody globally, they get like a shield as he channels the teleport, and then he appears on top of them, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
This is the opposite. You consume a certain percentage of your target ally's health and instantly teleport to their location. Upon reaching them, you dash in a line out of that ally, dealing damage along the line and so like basically he teleports
Kind of
onto the
like
person.
Kalista ult.
Uh yeah, I mean, think about the second part. So basically you're
Yeah.
teleporting onto someone globally, you're consuming that ally's health, a percentage of their health, and then you shoot out of them in a line, like a straight line. I think like medium distance. And deal damage along that line. And so he deals damage along that line, and then whatever the percentage, like whatever the amount of health you took from an enemy, increases the damage of the ultimate attack, right? So like if you
Mhm.
took the attack would be stronger out of a tank from consuming tank health than it would from like a squishy because you're just pulling from a bigger pool, right?
Right.
So now the reason I say the alt first is because of the second part that I think is important. So I designed him with two modes in mind for his basic ability kit.
Mhm.
Kind of the same way you know how Nidalee, right? She has panther form and her human form, and then Elise has like spider form and human form, and the Q, W, and E are different based on the form you're in, right? So I had something like that in mind for the QWE, except there basically was his standard QW and E, and then an enhanced version of QW and E. The way he gets access to the enhanced one, I had it set up so that basically if you do an R to teleport into a team fight, basically if at the end of the violent entry dash attack there are more than 6 champions in an area around him that are stained, he enters a combat reveler state, giving him increased move speed, increased vamp on physical damage, and changing the properties of their basic abilities. The combat reveler state ends if CC leaves combat for 3 seconds. So basically, now I'll give you the basics, right? Or I guess first of all, so thoughts on the R? I guess I should ask. Yeah, well, we can go through like that.
I see it being, if we're gonna say in the context of League, since that's what you have the most experience with, right? It seems a lot like a jungler, or in other games maybe like a roamer type, where you're capitalizing off of your team to execute ganks and push an advantage.
See, I really saw him as a top laner. It's interesting you say that.
I can definitely see as a top laner too, kind of like with the Shen reference that you said. but the sheer like aggressiveness of like launching out in a line and dealing damage when like upon landing on the ally seems kind of like very jungler like, not assassin necessarily. Like it reminds me a little bit of like Briar in a sense. Like you show up in a lane, you just start causing problems for the enemy team.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see that because it's definitely the idea. The idea behind it was that he is someone who wants to be dueling an enemy pretty much at all times. Like that's what the Stained is, right? So
Yeah.
I think of the way that release Silas. The kind of point to playing that champion in lane was you just wanted to scrap because of the way Kingslayer healed you. So
Right.
you were just trying to fight a lot. I see it like that, where in a lane you are constantly trying to trade aggressively. The ult is what gives him a way to basically get out of his lane and wreak havoc elsewhere and get to team fights quickly. Because the whole idea is he just wants to be in team fights. That's the point of like the Stained concept, right? Where at the end of the ult, if he's in a team fight and most of the team is there, so everyone around him is stained, he gets to enter a team fight in an enhanced state. Um, and then so the way I had his basic setup, right, is he has Q, which is Pain Spike, which basically a short range stab in front of him that when it hits applies a short duration slow, and when it hits a stained target, the stain is consumed, dealing additional damage based on the target's missing health and reduces the cooldown of Pain Spike. In the enhanced state, Pain Spike would become Carnage Cleaver, which instead of like a short range stab, now it's a full on cleave in front of them in a large cone that deals physical damage to all enemies hit and slowing them. And if that hits a stain target, the stain is consumed, lowering the cooldown of Carnage Cleaver and deals additional damage based on the target's missing health, right?
Hmm.
He has a W that I called Uppercut Combination. So he launches a quick volley of basic attacks that end in a knockup. I compare it to something kind of like Renekton W, but instead of just a full on stun, it's just two basics into like a knockup. And then in the enhanced state, uppercut combination becomes Savage Upheaval, where he dashes a short distance now. It's not just directly on top of him to a target, dealing three basic attacks that have Vamp, and the last attack knocks up in a small area around the target. So when he's enhanced in a team fight, his knockup now becomes like a small AoE. And then his E, I call it Battle High. He absorbs the energy of a champion within range, dealing damage and healing for a set amount of health that was recently lost. So think of it kind of like Tom Kench passive, but on a much shorter cooldown. And basically, he can, eat a recover health quickly that he just recently lost in a fight. Um, the modification for stain, though, is if he does it to a target that's stained, he removes the stain. The base healing is increased by the target's missing health, and he can actually heal more than just health that was recently lost. And then in the enhanced state, that heal goes from a single target to he absorbs the energy of all champions within an area. So it becomes a full-on AoE heal that can take stain off of stuff. And yeah, so that's kind of like the basic kit, right? On both ends, both its normal variation and its enhanced variation in like team fights.
Hmm. Okay, so yeah, I definitely see more of the top laner DNA coming out with like the CCs and the Shen-esque like auto attack uh buffs, kind of like when he pulls his sword back and stuff like that. So I'm seeing a lot more of that come through. So dope concept, like already. Like I think something that kind of has that aggressive play style, but you can also flex into not like a situational, like an off tank kind of situational role too, with a lot of what he does.
Yeah, the idea is like I like a scrappy lane. Like I like a set. I
Mm-hmm.
like a Silas. Like I like characters that want to trade aggressively and like they
But
want to
boxing,
kind of be in a fight. So that was kind of the core idea was like, okay, well, what does a character, look like? And like obviously his main set is about dealing damage to establish stain. And then if you have stain up, you can, hit abilities to get enhanced stuff from the stain effects. Um But then it's like, okay, well, like this character is always looking for a fight. So like, what does that mean for his ult? And his ult is just like we said, it's a way to seek more combat. Like if he's
Hmm.
out in a solo lane, pushing, and suddenly your team is now in a 5v4 team fight. Well, guess what? He can teleport into that team fight and just get like buffed because he is now in the shit, which is like where he always wants to be. Um, but kind of the balancing of that, right, is that this isn't a TP that is like a Shen one where it's like, okay, you're saving an ally from death. He is literally, it's a faster TP, but the cost is he's taking an ally's health. Like he literally, the kind of concept I have in mind is he's like literally like ripping through them to come out. So it's like you are taking an ally's health in order to get into that fight. So there is a sort of a give and take there. That I think is interesting. It's an interesting idea.
I see the vision. I see the vision.
Yeah, it was fun. I really like design, so yeah, it was really fun to sit there. And
I'm
I
glad
was
you enjoyed
yeah.
the little exercise I gave you, man.
Yeah.
I'm real glad you really thought all that out. I don't want to say I'm impressed. I've seen what you can do, and I mean I am impressed because you always think of really cool shit. But
Preach.
dude, you got some dope ideas. They gotta get you on board, man. 200 years my ass. This guy's pumping them out like hotcakes.
I probably should have just posted that to you earlier, but yeah. No, yeah, it's a good time. It's really cool. It's funny because it's like one of those things where like I had the easiest, right? It's easy to just like make a concept in a vacuum and be like, look at this. Because like when I look at that on paper and I start thinking about balancing implications, I was like, yeah, this seems like a nightmare. This is a hard job. Like there's so many parts of that kit that I can already tell just from looking at it, having no
Hmm.
experience in balancing a game or designing it. Where it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's one tick away from being just broken,
yeah,
just fucked beyond
yeah.
belief and like game warping.
No, put him in
And it's
Dota. It'll
like,
be fine.
yeah, it's so ton of can't. I think I think it is easy. I think it is easy to be an armchair game designer, right? Because I think it's an old Ghostcrawler quote, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be attributing this to the wrong person. But I believe it might have been Ghostcrawler. Old WoW dev turned Riot dev. I don't know if he works at Riot anymore either, though. He might have moved on to somewhere else. Um, but was a WoW dev and then was a Riot dev. But he said something that I thought was interesting. And it's very true, where he said, I believe the quote is something to the effect of, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that a rocket that exploded had a problem, but it takes a rocket scientist to fix it.
Hmm.
And I think that's very true with like game design, right? You don't need to
Yeah,
be a experienced game designer to tell that something is broken in the game, right? Like I think most people can see when something is fucked up or broken.
right.
But the thing that gets fucked up in translation is a lot of people go, "Oh, this is broken. Here's my brilliant fix for it." And the problem is we're not all game designers. So the thing we think is a brilliant and simple fix, 99% of the time simply is not. You are just breaking the game in another way that you don't realize it. And that's where being the game designer, being someone with experience and, putting blood and sweat into the field, that's where you get your answer, right? Is
Right.
actually figuring out a real fix to the problem.
Yeah, definitely. I totally get it. And to kind of cap this all off, right? You see that in a lot of these other games that we talked about today that failed, and even some that we didn't talk about that failed even harder. Not everybody
Yeah.
can make the games with the staying power. It is a lot of times a lightning in the bottle kind of effect, right? And you see that level of game design kind of come out. You see it now in like the modern era where we talked about with these newer iterations, maybe these sequels or these other games that kind of learn from the mistakes of games previous
Mm.
and have put together something a bit more polished, a bit more less cash grabby and more, from the heart, if you will.
Yeah.
With all that, anything else we gotta add?
Nah. I
No?
think
All right.
I
Well,
think we addressed it. I think that's
thanks
MOBAs
for
MOBAs in a
that's
nutshell.
the that's MOBAs in a nutshell. That's most of them, not all of them. Gave you some resources throughout the episode. I'll probably leave links down in the description below. With that being said, if you enjoy Hotkey's podcast, hottest esports podcast on the planet, and you want to hear more of us, see more of us, help us take things to the next level, go ahead, hit that like button, leave a comment. What are your thoughts? What are some of your champion or hero designs that you'd love to see in your favorite game? Sound off, subscribe so you catch us all the time, hit the bell so you know when we post, and we will see you in the next one.